Okay, so who's going to join me? Somebody jump in here. Talk about JFK. Why was JFK assassinated? How about that? Perhaps it's because he said that he was going to smash the CIA into 10,000 pieces. Some people would say it's his monetary policy, but the truth is he just reprinted the old greenbacks. So some people think he bucked the Federal Reserve, but he actually didn't. A good book to read on the subject is what was it called? Well, he calls it The Divine Right of the Killing of the King. He claims it was a sort of Masonic assassination, a sort of a ritualistic assassination. Silent weapons for quiet wars. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can speak contemporaneously on it. I know something about it, but not very much. It seems like a think tank document anyway. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced all the think tank documents, but they abound. So you can find think tank documents on all kinds of stuff. The report from Iron Mountain, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. There's a whole host of them. I mean, I can't even possibly recount them all. So who's going to jump in here? Nobody? We got nobody, huh? Yeah, sure. Jump in here. We can talk about JFK, or you and your friend can talk about JFK all you like. Again, it's not one of my areas of expertise. I know something about it, but it seems to me like there were a lot of people that wanted JFK dead. He's threatening the mafia. He's threatening everybody, essentially. The financial system, the CIA. I mean, who didn't he threaten? Cause are killing us. Okay. Where's zysis? He can speak contemporaneously for hours. Oh, cows are killing us. Yes. It's all about the global warming. Indeed. Right. The ice age is coming. The sun's zooming in. That's the clash. Quote, unquote. Everything seems to be cyclical like that. The ice age is coming. Oh, look out. Now it's global warming. Oh, look out. Yeah, it's all good times, merry days, happy tidings. Cowspiracy says cow farts are ruining the ozone. Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Clearly they are. Yes, you do click the join video call button, and you have to agree to the terms as well. There's a little tick box, I believe. I don't know if you're on your phone or your PC, Essence. Come on, somebody jump in here. We'll talk about the pyramids, or JFK, or the monetary system, or, I don't know, any particular history you might be interested in.
Hello.
Hello.
Right. The JFK assassination. Like, I don't know if you know who Poncho Pete is.
No, I don't actually.
Well, like he's like been on YouTube for a while, but he's just started doing like flat Earth videos and that. And we were talking about the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
And like, if you look at the original, like the footage and that, like you can just look at it on YouTube and that. There's frames that are missing from the video, and Poncho was saying that like it's not really JFK. It's like it's a mannequin with a pumpkin head.
Yeah.
And like there's frames that are missing from that, from where he's in the car with his wife or whatever. And there's frames that are missing from that, and there's people in the public that are missing. And then the guy that steps on to JFK's car gets there from nowhere.
I mean, I haven't seen it, so I couldn't speak to it, but I'll listen.
And like it looks as if his wife is like holding a stick that's connected to his arm. So when his arm goes up, like she's older than that.
Well, look, I'll be honest here. I have my level of skepticism. To what end? I mean, I guess I don't get it. Like, they wouldn't kill JFK, or he just agreed, and so it's just sort of goes into this sort of crisis actor mode. Is that what? Yeah. I mean, is that right? Okay.
Have you seen Dallas Goldbug's videos about JFK?
No, I haven't.
You haven't? Very interesting. He says that I'm not too sure who it was exactly. I think it's Carter. I think he says he played the role of JFK.
And there's a few, like, there was a video I was watching the other day, and like it's saying that I think it was JFK. He was saying that one of the presidents back then, I think it was JFK, like was another president later on. It's like he didn't really get assassinated, and like he got like like plastic surgery or something.
Yeah.
Like he was saying that, and I was looking at it, I was like,
Yeah, that's like the Dallas Goldbug theory that President Carter played the role of JFK. And then later on become President Carter. But that's not who he really is. Obviously, that he can change characters constantly. That's what these people do. They change characters and use prosthetics to pretend, which isn't too far-fetched to say. You know, that's not as far-fetched as saying that there's reptilian shapeshifters.
Well, I mean, if the people in charge of the way you guys are imagining them, are you saying they wouldn't kill a president? That seems
No, I'm
like
saying that they don't need to kill a president when they can make a president up. It's just a TV show.
You're telling me
they make a new character up, and then when they feel like that story needs to end, you know, because their story's playing out not like they wanted, they kill that character off for whatever purposes.
So you're saying JFK wasn't a real character then?
I'm saying that was just a TV show, yeah.
What just think about Michelle Obama being Michael Obama?
It's just the same concept sort of thing. These people aren't who they say they are. Like, we don't even know if that's their real name. Apparently his name's Barry Sartoro or something like that.
And there was a thing the other day where the elections that are going on in America now with like Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders and that.
That's a very weird name, Bernie Sanders. If you burn sand, you make glass. It's just very weird, the names that they use. You know what I mean? It's just very either coincidental or there's something more. I wouldn't say sinister. I'd just say like a circus, like a script.
Like me mate Poncho thinks that the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds control the whole of America. And there's this thing that I'm going to watch later on today, and it's something about bankers that the police ruled it as suicide, even though like you could tell that there was foul play in it. But all these bankers that committed suicide, supposedly committed suicide, you could see that there was foul play involved, but the police just ruled it out as suicide straight away.
Interesting. See, with them names though, like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, these are names that are very, very popular. So I'm not too sure if they are the ones that you should blame, because it just seems like they're the scapegoats that would be blamed. The ones that are really behind it are like in the shadows. Obviously, their names aren't known.
Zysis, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, Ryan?
Not too much, really. What do you say about the whole affair? Do you have an opinion?
About what, sorry?
Oh, we're talking about the JFK assassination.
Oh, he was definitely murdered. You just got to look at his sons. You do not fuck with the powers that be, man. He tried to. You just got to read his last speech. That's all you got to do. You'll know that he was definitely killed. And then look at all his sons. You know, that's a great psyop to actually say, oh, it was all fake, because then you don't research the actual truth behind it. It's very clever. You know, there's counter psyops for conspiracy theories. Definitely, that's the real stuff. You know, so you believe a narrative set in front of you that's completely contrary to what really happened, and that suits. You know, it's a diffusion of the situation, isn't it?
Well, I will say that I'm not overly familiar with JFK because the waters have been so muddied by conspiracy theories, and I'm not saying there wasn't a conspiracy, but they're so muddied by conspiracy theorists that it's almost impossible to sort it out. You know, it becomes so mucked up. So, right, you can create a lot of static for sure.
Yeah, the propaganda device, you know, told us the magic bullet. You know, everyone believed that. They actually believed it, and then slowly people started to realise that, hang on, magic bullet, what? And then, you know, when you actually, it's like 9/11, you know, people believe the narrative, then a few years later, a lot of people start digging stuff up, and then they start to realise, hang on a minute, none of this makes sense, and then you sort of play it all back, because, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. You play it back, and you're like, oh, fuck yeah, he was actually, you look at his last speech, I mean, it's a huge telling of what happened, poor bloke. You know, fight the system.
Yeah, his global conspiracy speech is what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, what is the global conspiracy then? What is it that he was trying to refer to that got him killed?
Banks are ruling the earth. They fucking rule they have taken over every country, basically almost every country, and they suspend. They hold everyone at ransom through the reserve banking. You know, that's what flat Earth is all about. It's about covering that up. It's what most conspiracies are about. That is the conspiracy. There's, you know, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing else. Everything's just crap to deceive people into thinking that there is something else.
Well, yeah, it's a perfect form of psychological warfare, isn't it? You defeat your enemy before you ever fight him. So you could argue that people are endlessly, I don't know, rabbit trailing down to the new conspiracy, the latest conspiracy.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because everyone wants the latest. They don't want old, you know, and then, you know, slowly JFK gets resurrected because it's so old it's new, you know. So everyone's like, oh yeah, JFK, and it's been done like, it's so clever. Every generation is like hoodwinked so easily. All you got to do is manipulate everyone until they get themselves in debt, and boom, get older, and then the parents are saying, "Get out of the house." 'Cause it's young minds. You've got to sort of sway, because they're the ones who can most have the greatest effect. Tiananmen Square is a great example of that. Young minds are the ones who can actually get up there and do stuff, because they're not tied down to house and family and all that sort of stuff. So provided that you can bullshit baffles brains, that's what you got to know, and provided that you can confuse them all for at least 6 years, and there's divisions out there that are solely based around distracting children and then keeping their minds fucked up when they're teenagers, and then
that's what
look at the music industry. Yeah, TV's exactly for that. It was designed by the military as a propaganda device. It was designed by the Germans, the masters of propaganda. Then they all moved to America.
Have any of you seen that TV show called Mr. Robot?
Oh yeah,
I have.
And it's about like the banks and that, isn't it? Like E-Corp and that.
Yep.
Well, it's not about the financial. It's about corporations, of course. Which again, it misses the mark slightly. Not to say corporations don't play a role, but it does miss the mark. So again, you're hacking at the branches as opposed to the root in that sense. So it's a sort of limited hangout.
Yeah, you blame the corporatocracy, but it doesn't talk about the actual mechanism behind it. It never confronts that. So then you're disarmed. It's so clever.
Yeah, and we've had actually corporate leaders like Ford, and there's been a number of them that have had that sort of run-in. They've had run-ins with the financial system. Ford, for him, he was trying to finance his own operations, and he was like, and they're trying to tear me down for it. I mean, he was under constant attacks, and so even the industrialists have had this experience. So there is a power above them.
Within that starts a big conspiracy. You look at Ford sponsoring Hitler, and so was Disney, because there was some sort of enemy behind all of that, and Hitler was fighting it directly. And what did the enemy get in the end? Israel. It was an incredibly clever manipulation, absolutely clever. Like, you learn enough about the German War, World War II, and you end up getting mind fucked. You're just like, what the actual fuck went on? And all you've got to look at is, well, who benefited from this at the end of the day? In hindsight, who benefited the most from all of this? And you can see that the Jews got Israel, America got into the G6, and England got put into massive debt and having a lot of money from the Knights Templar when they burnt them and took all their money. They took 1/3. A third of that wealth is still missing, by the way. But is it missing?
Britain lost her empire, though. I mean, let's face it, it was not good for Britain in the end of the day. She took the brunt of the burden.
Exactly.
So.
And it allowed this very sinister, Zionist style, to use all what the Germans were doing with the propaganda machine and all of this, and allowed them to manipulate and actually steal all of that, in a sense, and then, completely disarm free speech and yada, yada, yada. You weren't allowed to have an opinion after that.
Sure. It worked out pretty well for us in the U.S. I mean, we got a big explosion of stolen technology, right, that we got from Germany, and it made us look particularly innovative, and there was a whole host of things going on there. But
but there's a big conspiracy that you're not aware of. A very, very powerful set of things happened. They didn't want if you take all that technology and give it to the military, therefore it's owned by the people. It's the people's. So you need to not let it be the people's, and that's why the Energy Commission set up Area 51, and they set up all these research facilities. The Energy Commission is a private corporation. It's not publicly owned, because then it would be under certain laws. You'd be allowed on base. You'd be allowed to go check out all this stuff out. And if you look at places like Pine Gap, they're not actually owned by the military. They're owned by like Sony, Panasonic. That's who's in those bases. It's not military. It's military guarded and military protected and under the guise of the military.
Right. It's a quasi-public institution, so it has this hybrid quality to it. Then.
Yep. Yeah. And there's a huge kind of like fucking realize the bloody truth.
All right.
Yeah. It's horrifying when you really look deep into it. And that's kind of like, it silences you as well, because you realize the kind of powers that you're dealing with. And you kind of like go, fuck that, because you realize what they'll do to their own, even their own family. They have no fucking, you stand in their way and you will be rolled over instantly. So the old they, it's definitely a power that is to be respected, absolutely.
Yeah, what do the rest of you guys have to say?
I'm just listening. Just listening.
I was talking to I've got a Scottish friend, and I was talking to him the other day. He's in the military, and he was saying that I don't know much about World War II or none of that. It doesn't interest me at all. And he was saying that the Jews declared war on the Germans, Hitler and all that. And he was saying that Hitler was defending the Germans and that, while the Jews were fighting them and it. So I don't know what that's about.
Yep, and that's exactly where you're meant to be. You don't know. That's exactly where they want you, not knowing shit. And if you do know anything, it's just fringe data. And if you do get to the core of it, the truth is just so unbelievable that people won't believe you if you tell them. They just won't want to believe it.
And it's the same with flat Earth now. If you tell anyone, even if you tell a kid, if you explain it to him, because I was sat there with one of my mates the other day talking about it. We were there for about an hour and a half, and he wasn't having none of it. I was explaining it perfectly to him. He just wasn't having none of it. He was like, no, they say this, scientists have proved this, when everything's a theory. A theory's a guess, isn't it? It's the theory of gravity, the theory of evolution, the theory of relativity, and that.
Oh, yes and no, really. I mean, that's, it's sort of it's difficult to sort of reconcile, you've got to work within the framework that you're given. So there's a lot of truth in, theories of gravity and all that sort of stuff. It's not like that's hidden or anything, but, there's limitations to what we actually understand.
Yeah.
Greater understandings, the works of Schauberger or, Tesla was a fucking alcoholic. He was a gay alcoholic loon by the end of his days, and anyone who researches him deeply enough knows that. So it's in the best interest of the military complex for you to be staring at this guy going, yeah, he was so awesome, and not realizing that there's men who have been since him that are far more intelligent and have had far greater impact, but they're locked up in some base somewhere with no voice at all. And you can see since the days of Tesla, national security, all these kinds of things sort of kicked in because it suited the powers that be to have that set up, because then it can silence the very people who, there will never be another Tesla because he, will get sucked into a base. And then even a vet could attest to the fact that, if you show high intelligence, then they're going to offer you a position and and basically mollycoddle you into playing the part. And everyone's got to eat, so of course you're going to say, oh yeah, that sounds good. And of course it's just there, it's simply there just to prevent you from being a public figure and being a public person, so then you can be filtered. All your inventions, all your discoveries and all your knowledge can be perfectly filtered, and it gives it a greater sense of control, because it's really, ideally, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Control.
Psychological control works as well as all the rest of them as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
it's the whole, The Simpsons, hey, look, and he runs off, He's like, look, everyone, look over there, and he does the runner. That's what a lot of these, that's why people say PsyOps and COINTELPRO and stuff like that, because it's just so clever. And if you read about stuff like James Angleton, with the alien conspiracy and all this, I don't know, it's very interesting.
Angleton, I'm not familiar with him. Some of this occurs to me, though, too, that really, even if all you have to do is put out a report, right, COINTELPRO, even if you just submit the report to the public, it creates dissension in the ranks. You don't even actually have to physically have agents stirring the pot. Why wouldn't you start looking around you saying, well, oh, wait, what's going on here? So it's a sort of interesting phenomenon in that regard.
Oh, yeah. And you can see people acting as, it's like the UFO thing is a huge, if you actually research right into it, and all they had to do is drop the idea in people's minds that it's UFOs. Suddenly, people are going, oh, I was abducted. They're playing a part, and they're innocently, not so innocently doing it, but they're lying. So clever is the manipulation of people that they're all saying, oh, yeah, I saw an alien too. I've seen UFOs, and I've seen this, and so, and then you get your MK Ultras, you mind control people, blah, 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 and say they're abducted, and they reinforce the whole story, but the narrative perpetuates itself. You only need to set up you only need to push it in a direction, and then everyone just runs with it. It's like this flat Earth, suddenly everyone's believing the flat Earth with no evidence. No, they've got no actual evidence. No ice wall, no dome, but they take it on faith, and they run with it, and the flat Earth is the exact same bullshit as the whole alien conspiracy.
There is pictures of ice walls. If you wanted to say some type of ice wall, there is pictures of ice.
Not an ice wall going at the edge of space though.
No.
With a dome there, and not exactly as we'd expect.
Yeah, not as we expect, but there is pictures of very tall ice walls. So.
Yeah, I mean, they're in Alaska and Antarctica, but, I mean, even something simple like the Southern Celestial Pole. There's a ton of evidence contrary to flat Earth belief, yet people will believe it because they believe that they're fighting the system by believing in it. They think they're going to take down the man if they believe in flat Earth. Nothing could be further from the truth. You're not going to take down anybody. All you're going to be doing is, believing in something that's just not there. And that in itself shows the cleverness of these kinds of people, like in psychological warfare. Extremely clever.
And with UFOs, if you say UFO to someone, the first thing that they think is aliens.
Yep, exactly. And that is exactly what they want you to think. They want you to believe in aliens and UFOs.
Mm.
So then you will not see the technology and you will not ever question it.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. I just brought this up, and, of course I'm a big fan of history, and this is a reoccurring theme throughout history. And I don't care if it's freaking, Bigfoot or the Yeti, right? It's a reoccurring theme. Now, I do think that these people were experiencing something, and I have this tendency not to think it was sort of a technological phenomenon as we would imagine it. Maybe it's a more metaphysical phenomenon.
It's the what do we call it? Min lights. In the past, they saw the Min light.
Well, they saw a lot of things, and I mean, I know what you're talking. You're talking about the Earth lights, and I'm familiar with those. Those certainly, they can't describe everything. I mean, the Greeks talk about flying shields, and there's a whole number of phenomenon that people have seen. The American Indians talk about flying canoes, right? So I don't know.
And
I guess I'm trying not to cheapen our ancestors' cognitive ability,
Well, you notice they always seem relevant to the ideas at the time. Like once they're ships, then they're like the golden ball, and they seem to always be somewhat to what people understand at the time, not sort of what they're actually seeing. They're like, oh, it's flying. They're related to what they know.
Right, of course, yeah, they're tailored to the perception or the preconceptions of the time, undoubtedly. So if that's what you're referring to, but I mean, I guess I'm just saying that I don't think that they're meaningless at the same time. I don't think that they were just necessarily seeing Earth lights and that was it, and that explains it any more than like swamp gas does. Now, I'm not saying they're UFOs from another dimension, but our ancestors did have a different precept of, I don't know, a reality, I guess. It was multifaceted, right? So there wasn't this, facts are true and other things aren't. So it's kind of hard to explain, but they had a sort of, now we have science and religion, right? So we have these two separate hemispheres, and you can equate them with one hemisphere of the brain and the other hemisphere of the brain, and they're separated. But they didn't have that sort of separation. They were sort of merged and combined together, and it wasn't always perfectly clear what the perception was. So I guess that's where I go with it. Does that make any sense?
Yep. The hemisphere of the brain stuff is bullshit, right?
Well, I guess. Yeah, probably.
They've mapped the human brain and went, oh wow, yeah, it doesn't work in the way we thought.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then they, obviously they're not telling everything about what we know about the mind, because that's you leave that to psyop, because that's technology is not the greatest secret. It's the methods with which to control people is the greatest secret.
Well, I mean, I've heard you.
Oh,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, you're right.
Well, you mentioned the God helmet before, and I was kind of pontificate. I was thinking about that. So the God helmet, that means that we're sort of hardwired, right, for a sort of metaphysical experience.
Yep.
Right. So, I mean, to me, that's where I go with it. What does that tell you? I mean, that must say something about the human condition.
Well, okay, electricity travels along lines of electromagnetism, yeah? Like magnetism and electricity are virtually the same. And under certain conditions, electricity is so excited that it goes, bzz, bzz, and you can say that your brain is this super sophisticated quantum computer, and when the buzzing happens, your brain translates all that info and then reinterprets it, the way that your consciousness can understand it. Sort of like a pareidolia effect.
Okay. I mean, to me, where I would go with that is that's sort of an explanationism. In other words, if you can explain some portion of the mechanism by which this experience is to be had, right, you can say, well, it's meaningless, or it doesn't really mean much. And I don't actually go that way. I think it's actually more meaningful. Now, just by virtue of the fact you can trace it, that's fine. saying, but
that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Yeah. It's
Oh, okay.
way more meaningful than we attribute it to. We put it into the realm of mysticism and like, oh, I don't know, but we do. And there's a select group out there that know it way better than they lead on, and way more than they lead on as well. And it's only when it suits their narrative, technologically, that they'll release what they already knew for some thousands of years. I mean, look at the light globe. Look at the fucking light globe. The light globe was used by the Egyptians thousands of years ago. We knew full well that they had it. It was hidden technology, absolutely hidden.
The light globe, is that what you were saying, zysis?
Oh yeah, the light globe, yeah. Electricity was not discovered by Bell and
the
all these men.
Battery and so forth.
Yep, we knew about lighting systems. I mean, it's been said that when we cracked open the Great Pyramid, that it was lit up. The lights were still turned on. Yeah, and they freaked the fuck out. They were like, "What the fuck?" And there was probably a group, being Jewish or whatever, that knew all along. They were like, "Yeah, well, we know about that. We just don't use it because we like the slow release of technology." And there's that whole childlike mentality that people have. I know something you don't know, and having something that no one else has gives you that sense of power. And you can definitely see that throughout time. Look at the Bible, for example. With Protestants, and they weren't able to read the Bible. Just that very simple thing.
Yeah, you're right. Not until the printing press.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll tell you everything you need to know. It's right here, and we'll read it for you and interpret it. Yeah.
So you're not given any kind of sense of actual direct power at all. Like, you're powerless, and that's been evidenced all throughout history, that select groups will control and make sure that they maintain the systems of control.
Well, it's interesting. Martin Luther, right, who is I don't know, you can attribute him to the Protestant Reformation. It's interesting that the church did not kill him when they were busy burning witches at the stake and a whole host of other nasty things, but they just sort of let him go. So they sort of created this duality.
Yep.
You know what I mean, right? So
yep.
That's a sort of interesting phenomenon. I mean, they weren't so kind with everybody else. Maybe he was a prominent figure. I'm not really sure, but it is strange when I read about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, slavery doesn't suit the banks. It doesn't, because slaves don't get house loans. So, the taking of America, once America was sort of invaded and taken over, back in 1913, then, you can slowly see them slowly corrupt and slowly work their way into government and, bring about their plans. But the best laid plans are those of, people beyond them, like intelligences beyond their own. They'll always utilize intelligent people. You don't have to be smart to rule the world. You just need to surround yourself with smart people.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting you say that. If you actually look at the plantations, which is sort of an interesting phenomenon, you find that they actually employed freed white men to clear the plantations because that was the most dangerous job. So, your leg could be crushed, you could be bitten by a snake, whatever the case may be. It was extremely dangerous, but they could just sort of cast you to the side. I mean, nobody had a vested interest in your well-being other than your hourly wage. So it was a sort of a more sleight of hand, and I guess we all find ourselves in that situation at this point.
Yeah, it's very cunning.
It is cunning, really.
Yeah, very, very cunning. And it is sad. I mean, for me, it's quite sad sometimes to see people misled, and as much as you try to tell them that, hey, it's not like that, you just can't, you end up realizing it's just psychological. You're beating your head against a wall, but it doesn't, don't lose faith.
Well, where else am I going to go? So here I am.
Yeah, the old divide and conquer works well, man. You just got to keep people fighting each other, which is easy to do.
It is. You can see it in a simple thing like this hangout. I mean, you get 10 people in here, right? And it's tough to get everybody to agree on any one thing. Yep. So imagine
everyone has their own opinion.
Yeah, but opinions are not facts. And it's the way we're taught about the mind, and the way we're taught about opinions, and we think our opinion matters. We don't listen to like each other. Yeah, opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one.
Yeah, and they all stink. You know what I mean? And they all stink.
Yeah.
You think it's pretty, you think it's like roses. To yourself, you can smell it, and it smells all right. But to everybody else, it's fucking putrid.
And it's funny though. Like usually you'll argue with people. Like I find myself. You argue with people, but then after a while, people sort of dissolve and go. Both sides dissolve, and there's that sort of genetic. that we have. We're a communal species, and we realise that we're here to get along. And we break down those sort of social conditions, the conditioning that we have, and we're like, oh yeah, let's just get along and work together. And I think everyone's attuned to that. And yeah, the banks love the idea that we're all fighting, and they try to maintain that.
Everyone just has different belief of what culture they're in. Take religion, for example. There's many types of different religion that many types of different people believe in, and you can't change what they believe in because it's what they, been taught.
Shit. And in that lies a utopia, it's a utopia isn't like, oh, we're all economically happy and, we're all doing the jobs we like to do. A utopian society is really where everyone is on the same page and agrees on certain things. And it's sad to say that the only way we'd actually achieve a utopian society, because we're so primitive at this point in our lives, or in our progression as a species, that only an outside foe would actually bring us all together and make us drop our little differences and, unite and fight together. It's sad, but that's true.
You're going to invoke Reagan, huh?
Or what's really sad is just grab one fact that everyone has to believe in and throw everyone else's opinions away in the garbage, and that's kind of sad because you're throwing away what they believe in.
Yeah. Well, you could do it by another means, right? Brute force.
No, not force.
You're not, but that's social conditioning. I mean, you're not forced to believe in the narrative. Like, you can believe anything you fucking like. Whether or not it's going to benefit you is up to you. But you're not forced to believe certain things. You just choose to believe them because it preys on the fact that you're a communal species. We're all here. And we all want to. It's like the insane monkey thing I used to talk about a long time ago. Like, I want to be different, but I want to be the same. I want to be unique, but I don't want to stand out too much. So there's like this, you got to pray. There's sort of a certain element that preys on that fact that, you want to be different, you want to have an opinion, but you don't want to stand out so much that you're not so different,
Don't be an outcast. That's technically what you're going to be in your mind.
Yeah. And you only outcast yourself because you can keep your opinions to yourself. But being a communal species, we kind of tend to say, hey, I've got this idea, and we talk about it. Because that's psychology, where if you do have an idea, you bounce it off other people, like, so you can validate that idea and see what other people think about it, because, and that's definitely what lends to anything that we talk about.
Yeah, clearly we have that sort of communal quality. I don't doubt that.
Yep.
It's, yeah.
I
mean, our biggest problem in the Second World War was getting soldiers to shoot at the enemy here in the U.S. You don't hear that too much, but that was really the biggest problem.
Then that was they developed that was 1919 where they realised that, a study done in 1919 after the First World War by the Germans, and it went right up until Vietnam. I know about this because military, but they started using, instead of using the bullseye targets, they started using human-shaped targets, and studies to this day prove that it used to be like 8% of the people would actually would want to kill someone. Now we're conditioned through video games and just using human-shaped targets, especially video games. 96% of people will kill someone, their own species.
Christ.
It's fucking depressing, isn't it?
It's
just to experience it and know what it feels like to kill someone else and take someone else's life. That's
and in swordplay, man, like I can't tell you how many people I've trained with swords, and they quietly say to me, "Man, I just really want to kill someone," and I just turn pale. I'm like, "Oh," because I'm responsible for them.
The path that our generation is going, it's like every single person has deep down in their mind, it's corrupt.
Oh yeah.
Yep, totally agree, man.
And people kind of think it's too late to go back on that.
Never.
And
I think everything will come full circle. I think we're coming full circle, especially the generations below myself and Ian. You guys need that, that knowledge and that power. I don't mean to say you guys, but you know what I mean? Like, my generation woke up a little bit, and it's up to me to impart everything I know to the younger generation so they can wake up even more. And then, it might not be while I'm alive, but the fight will begin, and we'll fight these assholes, and we'll wake up to the human farming model and the fucking banks and the manipulation of ourselves. We will wake up. It's inevitable. We have to. That's my biggest hope anyway, that we'll be knowledgeable enough to see straight through these cunning manipulations of our families and our ancestors. It's important.
Yeah, right. It's only going to take the thin, senile hand to slip off the tiller for a minute or two. It's really not going to take much for us to reset. Your life instinct has to sort of kick in. So
Yeah, when you look into it really deeply, you end up realizing that society is a house of cards, and they know full well, like the powers that be, the banks, they know just how delicate this world order is. It is extremely delicate because it's built on the back of tyranny and oppression.
I agree. Right. That's why they're not going to declare martial law or send people to FEMA camps or any of that bullshit, because you're already in a camp. Why would they do that? You're going to introduce a new variable that's going to shake the tree. You don't shake the tree unless well, not to that extent at least. So
if you're grasping for straws, then you probably would.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, man.
Even the black-clad police, the ninja-clad police, I don't see that as a strength. I see it as a weakness. Like, if you have full, total control over the population, why would you do that? You can't just bark out orders. So something is wrong.
And then you can start to see that it's just the same as the God concept, the nuclear weapon concept. It's just fear. It's fear porn. It's stealing your power from you. Like, it's taking your power because you're too afraid. You think the government's this all-powerful monstrosity, and so therefore you feel powerless, and so you are powerless in that thought. That's really important.
Yeah, it's sad though. A lot of people are under the illusion.
Like, how can one person change the whole entire world? That's basically what people start to feel like, and they just give up and just accept their fate, but they shouldn't.
How can you change yourself?
Beliefs.
Work on yourself, you change the world.
Right.
What you believe is very, very powerful. Recognizing that power, that you're an electromagnetic being who can actually align atoms and draw in particles and manipulate time and space. Once you realize that your absolute power, then you can't be controlled. You just can't be, because your beliefs override any form of control. Beliefs are extremely powerful. So it gives you that sense of divinity, that sense of ultimate power. And I think that's been, that belief in ourselves has been stolen from us.
Ooh, that's really good, zysis. I like that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, I totally agree.
Yeah, man. I believe in everybody. I never really truly think anyone is stupid or unworthy or anything like that. That'd be hypocritical of me to actually believe that, because that's the very system of control that put us where we are. It's sure, we can all fall and have our dark moments, which I do. Everyone does, but at the core of my being, I believe in I believe in everybody and their own ability to. They're an electromagnet just like me. How could they have any less power? It's not possible.
No, it doesn't seem so. No, it's not. It was just as a sort of, I don't know, a vignette, right, to that. I told you guys my girlfriend got me dowsing rods, so we were playing around with them, and she's like, "Watch, I'll push them open." So I'm standing there about 3 or 4 feet from her, and she's like, "Watch, I'll make them move. I'll separate them." And sure enough, she did it. So we did it like 3 or 4 times, and I was like, this can't be. You know what I mean? I'm sitting there focused on them, and I'm like, that's impossible. How can that be? That's not right. Something's wrong here. It's my, I'm doing this psychosomatically or something. I'm doing everything I can to work my way around it. And she's like, no, you can like push in that direction. You can send your energy field out, call it whatever you want. But, and she, of course, is not very scientific about the whole thing, but boy, it was a lot of fun.
It's funny. You made me think about the about dowsing rods. I had a nice big think about that the other night. And what I come up with, and I guess it's pseudoscientific, but the underwater flows would actually be pulling the electromagnetic energy with it. And so the rods, you think of it like everything's like a flat plane, and if there's water flowing, the electromagnetism flows as well.
I get exactly where you're coming from. Okay.
The two rods come together because they're being pulled into the flow.
Yeah, I dig it. Okay.
Yeah, boom, we've done it.
Right. It's like makes perfect sense. Yeah, I get it. That's pretty cool. But with a human being, they actually separate. So it's something, it's different in that regard, which was,
you think of your field, that would push them out too, because they would align to, they'd actually go, if you're holding them in front of you, they would align to, if you draw a circle around yourself, and then from your center point, or from your spine, your current, you draw lines, and I bet that those rods will actually, if you draw a perfect line along the rods, they'll point directly at your center point of your energy.
Oh, right. Yeah, I get you. That's pretty cool. I'll have to go that route next time.
Yeah, Schauberger's taught me a lot.
Yeah, that's where I went right away with Schauberger. Yeah, right. Yeah, you have a toroidal field around your body.
Yeah, I use Schauberger to empower people. Like, when people are feeling a bit down, it's like, this guy, he was not academic at all. At all. He never went to university. All he did was stare at trout in a river, and look what he did. It's, his understanding and perception, and you could go through all the academia you like, and you won't actually really do anything. You're just another cog in the machine. The real movers and shakers were the ones that made observations on their own and then inspired the academics. So it's sort of a point for me to say, believe in yourself and just observe reality. You don't have to go that academic route. That's just fear, isn't it, really? It's a sense of fear.
Well, sure
that
it is.
runs you through it.
Yeah, as far as I know, most of our greatest inventions have come from guys working in the workshop.
Yep. And they weren't, some dude who worked for IBM or Microsoft. And that in that as well, that, we're not truly told that, but we're given that idea, and that is robbing you of your intellectual power, the power of your intuition. I mean, intuitive intelligence is the most powerful. I don't give a shit about your mathematic or, academic intelligence, learned intelligence. Anyone can learn and, just repeat what you've learnt at fucking school. That's not intelligence. Not at all. Just because you know a bunch of facts and figures, it doesn't make you intelligent. It just means you've got a good memory.
Yeah, you can iterate what you've heard. Sure.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I get that. So who's in here? The Lord John Cumby shell detector. What do you say, bro?
Shit, baby.
That's all the fuck you have to
I didn't even know he was on.
That's all, baby.
Okay.
I like listening, dude. That's a very interesting conversation. I wanted to ask, actually, what was the name of the author? Schroedberger? How do I spell that?
Schauberger, yeah.
Go ahead,
Schauberger.
Schau burger is in hamburger. Oh no, BER burger. I'll just type it out.
Yeah, I would like to read it into this toroidal field around the body. That's very interesting. I've heard about it, and I never really knew where to source it out. So now that you guys mentioned it, I'd like to look.
Hands of Light.
Hands of Light?
Yep, Hands of Light.
Ooh, they have a PDF. Beautiful. Oh, no. Barbara Brennan.
Barbara Ann Brennan, yeah.
That's what I'm looking for?
Hands of Light, yeah. She worked for NASA, believe it or not.
No way.
And,
she paint floors and all that shit?
She started seeing energy, and NASA didn't really recognize. Well, it's not like they didn't recognize, but yeah, she worked for NASA, and that's not something to lend her any credibility of any kind, but yeah, a very, very scientific-minded person being able to see energy fields, and then, her journey with what she saw and how she actually used it. Really trippy stuff.
Yeah, I'll get this book.
If we had the whole 100% of our brains would be telepathic or something.
Yep.
I think that's what some people believe.
No, it's not. You don't have to believe that anymore. It's actually real. We've actually found the circuit in your brain that is actually similar to a mobile. We've actually found the telepathic circuit in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
We know that we're capable of telepathy, and whether we're using it or not, I think we are. I think we use it all the time. We're just not conscious of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, because you can think really, really dark shit. And say you're sitting down in a supermarket, or sitting down in a food court or whatever, and you think really, really just raw, like you're chopping everyone's head off in the food court.
Yeah.
People will look at you really weirdly. They'll be like, "Fuck, are you doing?" And you can do the opposite.
Don't you ever have some of those visions of what's gonna happen later on in the day, and while you're sleeping?
Yeah, deja vu.
Yeah, it's deja vu.
Yep. Seth explains that really weirdly. Seth explains dreams in such a cool way too.
Yeah, well, I remember just the landline phones. I mean, you would say, "Oh, that's my buddy Joe calling me," right? And you pick up the phone, and sure enough, it would be him. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but 90% of the time you got it right. So, yeah, we have that sort of interconnectivity there, I think.
Yeah, the power of intuition is an incredible device.
Sucks.
What?
You cut out, buddy.
Oh.
Okay. Pokemon luck.
Oh, is he gone? Okay.
He might come back though. He muted his mic. I think he said that his phone sucks, so he might be back.
There's some African tribes that actually have a tradition that they believe that we were here with the mist over the earth, so the stars were veiled. You couldn't see the sky per se. But beyond that, we were telepathic. So nobody had a language, like a written language or even a spoken language. We just sort of communicated via emotions. Kind of an interesting concept. I mean, it's one of those things where, we can sit here and talk, right? But words are really sort of insufficient to explain how people are reacting or feeling, but if I could actually detect your emotions, right, it would be a sort of different, a different concept, I guess. So they do have that sort of tradition.
You can't scam and enslave people if they're like that, though, can you?
No, actually, you can't, can you? Like right away, if you were a charlatan, you would detect it. There wouldn't be right.
Yep, all the pheromones, all the things you'd just be able to see straight through them, and you'd see what the Tibetans say is you'd actually see an effect around their body when they're lying. Like anger turned inward looks like someone's got thunderclouds around them.
Oh, right.
Someone who's really enlightened, the Matrix, someone who's really got a really nice energy about them, have a gold field around them. That's where they get that from in the Matrix. Yeah, you have a gold aura. You look like you're on fire as well.
Oh, it's gold. It's not purple.
No, gold. Yeah.
Gold. Okay.
Yeah, the golden dodeca phi ratio or whatever. The what is it? The Merkaba?
Yeah.
Yep.
The Merkaba. Yeah.
Merkaba. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't even. Well, gold was the color. Okay. Yeah, I can dig it. I need to study the Tibetans a little bit. I know you said the other day they have a history going back 11,000 years, so that's interesting in and of itself.
The Third Eye by Tuesday Lobsang Rampa.
The Third Eye. Okay. It's in my notes.
Isn't that like the Eye of Horus or Horus or something?
No, the third eye. Your third eye is your imagination. You know how you can visualize stuff in your mind?
Yeah.
That's your third eye.
Well,
that
is
your
pineal gland, right?
Actually, no. We've found that it's not, because people have had their pineal glands removed and they can still imagine. People with brain tumours and stuff have had their pineal gland completely removed. The pineal gland, from what I've been reading, the pineal gland is attributed to your perceptions of time, which in a slave nation is far more important to control than imagination. Because if you have no concept of time, then you can just let your life whittle past, can't you?
I suppose so. But I mean, my pets, right? My cats, they have no concept of time. They don't really worry about it too much, and they're pretty happy. So yeah, it depends on how you look at it. Yeah.
Well, no, but they value the day.
I don't know. The pineal gland seems to be omni-important, right, with most of the traditions. You're saying it's related to time, your perception of time.
Schuller tuning, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, that was the studies done on people who had their pineal gland removed. They had a really bad perception of time. Absolutely terrible.
Well, there's people that have had, their brains have been mostly liquid, and led perfectly normal lives. I mean, they don't have high IQs, but that's happened as well. So, well, I mean, even where your thoughts emanate from and all of that stuff is, it's debatable, but I don't know if you're familiar with that. But yeah, I mean, so you get these like Edgar Casey type figures that say that, your thoughts are emanating from elsewhere. Like you're more like a receiver. And
yep, your brain is like a radio receiver, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've read a lot of studies about that. And the God helmet could actually be, you'll like this, the God helmet, in my opinion, is actually interfering with the signal and you're experiencing your true self in a way.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Oh, I dig it.
Yeah, there has to be a rational explanation for everything. There has to be.
That's like a Faraday cage for your head, huh?
Exactly. Oh, man, that's really good.
Mm-hmm. No, that's cool. I like it.
They're actually trying to bleed the God helmet into, like, video games now, like the virtual reality headsets.
Oh, you can feel another person in the room with you, and, yeah. Wow.
That's a scary concept.
That is scary.
Because you could actually manipulate someone to go, there's demons all around me, and start just murdering everybody. Like, I don't know, man. I reckon
people could play video games until the point they died. I mean, really, you could just ignore your physical body, if that makes any sense. I think you could, though.
If you look a few videos of virtual reality, there's one where there's I think he's 80 and his son lets him play with the virtual reality, the set, and he's just standing there in a pitch black field with like loads of zombies around him, and a woman comes in the room, and as she's coming in the room, the man is like shooting zombies and that, and when she's standing there, he thinks she's a zombie and starts hitting her with the controllers that you hold with the virtual reality headset. And he thinks that she's a zombie when he's playing the game, but to him it's like, real life.
Wow.
Jesus Christ, that gives me just a whole really bad shiver about him.
That's spooky.
Well, if you could transmit, a God helmet style effect through people's phones, everyone, could just run around thinking that everyone else is a zombie. And there's always been that scenario in a lot of stories.
And there's a drug that makes everyone look like a zombie. Forgot what the drug's called, but there was a video that went viral on Facebook, and it was a woman, and she's took this drug, and she thinks that everyone's a zombie, and she's looking at herself, freaking out, and while she's doing that, she's just hitting everyone on that. So if drugs can do that, and then you see videos of people with the virtual reality headsets on and that attacking people, how advanced this technology is going to be later on, and then the impact that it's going to have on people that use it. If you get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's spooky.
You say that technology is going to destroy the world. Depends on how you use it, though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's neutral, I suppose. Sorry.
With consoles, it's just kids will be on the consoles all day after day, becoming hermits and not going out and learning stuff outside and just sitting on Call of Duty or any of these first-person shooter games, and that's what makes them think, oh yeah, I want to kill someone. I want to know what it feels like in the hands. It's ridiculous.
But it gives that kind of thing gives very few people ultimate control because we've figured you out. We're out to get you. Here we come, and then they just go flick, push a button, and everyone just starts murdering each other. Can't get us. It's very scary. Well, I don't know. It's not so much. Knowledge is knowing. Fear is the unknown. So knowing is the better part of overcoming fear.
Well, sure. That's sort of Nietzschean, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the sort of will to power thing. I mean, fear it's not bad per se. So, that's where the New Agers sort of go. Fear is evil and it's bad. They're afraid of being afraid. So
yeah, it's just a heightened sense of survival.
Yeah. Fear can keep you alive, too. So, it's a sort of mixed bag, I guess. I guess I just wanted to qualify it a little bit. My girlfriend kind of takes that stance. Oh, fear is bad. And I'm like, well, no, it's not entirely. I mean, it keeps you alive, right? That fear instinct. So you just don't want to go overboard with it and be afraid of everything.
Yeah, well, you get into paranoia, hysteria, and not healthy.
No, you don't even live your life that way. You're already dead. So yeah.
Yeah, and we've all experienced paranoia at least one point in our lives. Sense of paranoia at least.
First time you take weed.
I love my weed, man. I fucking love weed, and I've seen some of my friends just go I'm 40, and I've seen some of my friends just go a bit overboard with it, abusing the shit out of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, you reckon it for everyone else by doing that, because something there.
One when you wake up and one when you go to sleep is fine, isn't it?
The old breakfast brekkie bong.
In the UK now, there's going to be all the PMs in the UK in October are going to talk about legalising weed where medical marijuana.
You're breaking up there, boss.
Internet. What about now?
That's better.
Okay. I was saying that in the UK, there's going to be all the PMs are going to talk in October about legalising weed where we can have medical marijuana and then be able to smoke it in shop. Change the UK, all these dealers, that are out on the streets and that wouldn't be getting no money. It'd be going to, the government.
Well, sure, they'll license it probably at the end of the day.
Yeah, it'd be good to get a hemp license, so that you can grow it, and grow it on a commercial sort of scale. Be a good, I don't know, I think it'd be a good career, a good lifestyle.
It probably would be. I mean, but whatever the case may be, they're going to give you a license to do what you should already have the right to do. I guess that's my argument.
Yeah, bloody oath. The fact that we've demonized it is just abhorrent. A plant.
Right.
We'll go to jail for it.
Right. Plant. I agree. It's preposterous.
You see that doco about the kid in the kid in I think Toronto, and they had to move. I forget what state they moved to just so their kid could get access to marijuana. And it was we shouldn't even be having to do this. And they shouldn't. The guy had to quit his job, and the father had to quit his job, and they had to move, and it was just really traumatic, just so that their little kid could use medicinal marijuana.
I feel what confuses me is why alcohol's still legal, because there's more deaths from alcohol than there is by smoking weed.
Oh yeah.
So if weed is illegal and you're not allowed to smoke it, then why can people go out, get drunk drug and do all this crazy stuff? Like, shouldn't alcohol be illegal?
Well,
Makes you stupid.
I think it's, well, I mean, here in the U.S. at least, we have a significant portion of the population that's Germanic. I mean, we almost spoke German here. So I think it's a sort of traditional value, right? And let's put it like this. We had Prohibition where they tried to make alcohol illegal and everybody just sought it out anyway. So, I don't really want to go that way, but
back to JFK, that's how the Kennedy family made all their money.
That's right. They're rum runners. Sure. Yeah.
Problem days, yeah. See, then there's that double-edged sword situation that you get where they're making it illegal just so they can profit from it, the arseholes,
Well, sure. If you want to make something legal, though, you just say, it's legal, have at it. That's what you do. You don't say, well, it's legal and we're going to regulate it. That's my big problem with it at the end of the day. So you take a hands-off approach and just say, have at it. If you want to grow your own plants, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, here in Australia, it's really weird. Like, it depends on where you are, but it's kind of like virtually legal. But then if you're in a certain part of Australia, like, they'll just they'll throw you in jail for it.
Oh, they will, huh?
Yeah, and then there's other towns where, the police just don't give a shit. It's really weird.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say what that's about. I think here in Ohio, you can technically grow 3 plants. I think that's how it works. As long as it's not for distribution. Now, if you get picked up in the car with it, well, that's another thing. But they made some provision for it. Most people don't know about it, but it's there. So
in the UK, I just don't think you're allowed to smoke it overall.
Yeah, the UK is a surveillance state, man. It's bad news for the UK.
But with police in some places in the UK, you can go out and just walk along the street and smoke it. And if a police car pulls by, sometimes they won't care that you're smoking and that. So it's illegal, but some police just don't give two flying fuck.
Well, why would you walk around the street smoking in the first place? I don't see the logic in that.
No, that's just the way kids in the UK are now. They think they're everything, and they'll just smoke it whatever they want.
See, recreational use and people that use it for medicinal use, I don't mind that type of shit. But people like that go out and give it a bad name by smoking it on the street and then loitering because they're going to be flicking the butt around and whatnot.
Yeah.
They're not going to be taking their paraphernalia with them. It just seems absurd to me. You're giving it a bad name. The plant can be used for a lot of purposes. It can be made to use. It can be used to make hemp. It can be used to make clothing, other accessories. It has medicinal uses. So to hear about it being used like that immaturely is just I wouldn't promote that.
Just the UK kids.
I understand why the police turn a blind eye to it, because it does have a lot of beneficial purposes, and a lot of people have family members that take it for that medicinal use. So it's not like another drug that ice or meth or heroin or something like that, that ruins people's lives and drains them and changes who they are. Makes somebody takes somebody that has a house and a car and a job and then takes all their money and wastes it all for that one drug. That's not what weed does. I've never seen a weed head waste all their money trying to buy more weed. They get stoned and then they're high. But somebody on meth or whatever, they have to fiend for their drug. An artificial man-made drug that they go back for more. The chemicals that are being used in the weed these days is getting bad, where they're trying to make it more addictive. But the plant itself is not bad.
Well, let's face it, at the end of the day, marijuana pacifies you. It is a pacifier, so why wouldn't they legalize it? So there's a simple truth there as well.
That's right. It can help to turn their sheeple into more docile sheeple,
Oh, that's true. I mean, I don't object to marijuana per se, but I mean, I had a stint where, I smoked enough weed where I really felt like I couldn't feel anything, or it made me passive, so I kind of gave it up. So there's that.
I have an objection to the, what would I call them? The dabbers, I think they call themselves. I have an objection to that. That's just going too far, and the way they promote it, each to their own. If you want to do that behind your own closed doors, you want to strain weed and you find the the harshest type type of resin for it, so then you can smoke it and get right off your face. So I understand you want to do that, but don't promote that, and then don't try to make that and then make money off it, because that's absolutely absurd. Then you will get some people that, I wouldn't say overdose, but yeah, they could overdose because they take like a big amount too quickly and then they choke on it or something, and then we'll have our first death from marijuana, and it's not appropriate. It's not the way to like present this, you know what I mean? Like,
well, I don't think anybody's died from a marijuana overdose, to the best of my knowledge. So
eventually they will, with all this fucking dab shit that's coming out, with all the chemicals that they put in the weed these days, and plus they're straining it so that they can get the resin to be as chronic as they can. Eventually, somebody's gonna have
you build up a tolerance to it, and you need more and more powerful marijuana for sure.
Oh, yeah, petrochemical marijuana,
yeah. It's not.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's not a. It's a. Well, I mean, at least it's a natural occurring plant, you know, as opposed to LSD, which is manufactured in a lab. Like, I don't support anything that's sort of manufactured like that. Now, maybe it has its sort of purpose, but as a general rule, I'm opposed to it. So I don't know. Where do you stop and where do you start? I mean, should you be able to go to the drugstore and get a syringe? You know, that's the trick, I think.
Exactly, really. Like, you can't go to the drugstore and buy yourself a plant, but you can go to the drugstore and buy yourself a man-made drug that will, in the long run, affect you more than what the plant did.
Well, yeah, I used to go there and get my dog insulin. He was a diabetic, and, you know, they always questioned me and they were suspicious, but, you know, I suppose if you want to do yourself in with insulin, it'd be a simple procedure. Just fill up the vial and shoot it and you're done. So, you know, I don't know where we're going to go, but it does seem like a Soma scenario, right, where everybody's going to be placated by drugs too, right? And everybody's pushing for that. Like, yes, give us our weed, man. So it does make me wonder.
Like a dependency? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, you guys are familiar with that, right? Soma?
No, I'm not. That's why I asked.
Okay. Yeah, it was Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and that's what happened. Was everybody was addicted to this particular drug called Soma, and you know, your obedience was directly related to how much Soma you could get. So that's how they sort of pacified you at the same time. So that's what spooks me out about the marijuana thing. I'm afraid it's going to be regulated, I guess. I'm hoping that they'll just take a hands-off approach, but the federal government doesn't usually do such things.
Mass cultivated, anything that has to be mass cultivated, they've got the land to grow it. We don't really have the area to grow, you know. We can't really mass cultivate. You have to have the land to do this. So they're the only ones, the government, military, corporations.
Well, you don't need a lot of land to grow marijuana in that regard.
Mass cultivate. So mass cultivate.
Well, mass cultivate
to provide, like, say, Winfield, a tobacco company, would for the world. They're a worldwide company, Winfield. They'd have a lot of land that they cultivate their tobacco on, you know. So they'd have to have the land. So maybe that's why Afghanistan's getting taken over. They want to produce, you know, they're taking more land for their cultivation.
Well, that's opium trade there. That's a different scenario, but yeah.
They could do it with a lot of things. They're telling us it's opium, but they could be growing everything and anything there. They could be harvesting our foods there right now, for all we know. Like,
you can grow a lot of food right on your own property, though. You really can.
I'm talking about mass cultivation, though. I'm talking about providing for society. Yeah. The supermarkets, you have to provide the fruits for every Woolworth, every grocery store. That's how these people think. They don't think on a lower scale. They think about putting their food in everybody's store.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I don't know how it relates to drugs per se. Like I said, you don't need copious quantities.
Well, that's just a market. That's a resource. These people don't think in one way. Like, you know, they're not one object type people. They will use anything. If it's fucking plastic one day, if it's glass the next, whatever somebody's buying, that's what they will sell.
Yeah.
So if they find out that nobody's smoking marijuana anymore, or nobody's taking opium more, then they'll stop growing it and they'll find out what is being eaten or consumed, and they'll start to cultivate that.
Well, with the legalization of marijuana in states slowly coming, it's going to affect, I assume you're talking about like fields overseas.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Fields overseas. They're going to that's why I reckon the wars are going on, so then they can take land that's not theirs and cultivate something, whatever it may be.
With our Democratic National Party has put marijuana legalization as one of our top priorities over here, and And as soon as that happens, you'll start seeing a decrease in growing overseas, because a large portion of that, especially from Mexico, does end up in the United States. So we're going to have federal growers and things like that that's going to regulate it. So that'll cut back on international trade.
Right. Just like we've done with all the rest of our trade. I don't believe it for a minute.
Well,
I mean, we're big international traders. There'll be Chinese growing it tomorrow.
Yeah,
they can do it cheaper.
Right. Go straight back over to China. Ship straight over to China.
We don't have any. There's no protections here at all. We don't have any import taxes like we used to.
They've already got rice fields and whatnot that they could turn easily into like marijuana fields. The Chinese are very very ingenuitive, very resourceful.
Yeah, not ingenuitive, resourceful probably.
Resourceful.
Yeah. So, well, who's on the panel here?
I'm a referee.
Sean. Hey,
how's it going?
How's it going?
Pretty well. How are you?
Oh, I'm well, thanks. We're just shooting the breeze, I guess.
That's good. I was looking for something that was live, so I just popped in here.
Well, I guess you came to the right place.
I was actually
live on the Jimmy Kimmel Show.
I actually had a flat Earth discussion earlier today, so it's one reason why I was drawn to this hangout.
We're not even talking about flat Earth.
It's in the title, though. Flat Earth debate.
If you're
concerned, yeah, I know. He always titles it debate. It's like there's no debate. There's no
the science is pretty conclusive
for any side to present for there to be a real reasonable debate. It's just going to be argumentative, like deconstructive rhetoric, is what I'd say. There's no debate.
Yeah, it's pretty divisive.
In my opinion, an argument isn't evident and shouldn't be counted as evidence. And what I mean by that is, if somebody has an argument that may make sense on the surface, but it has no supporting facts to back it up, then that argument should not be used as evidence for any claim. And flat earthers have no evidence, whereas the globe theory, virtually every field of science, and if you don't believe NASA's photos and stuff like that, that's fine. But there's simple tests that people can do with just a yardstick, measuring the angles of the sun at high noon in various places around the world, that will give you the curvature of the Earth. So that's my stance on it.
Each to their own, though, depending on what mathematics you're using. Like, that's what I try to put out of on the table, is maybe the mathematics that we are taught can be looked at from a different way if you know another way to look at it. Maybe the same mathematics that we look at can describe another reality to a certain group.
Right, but
it's like a language hidden within a language.
But when we're discussing reality, it's important that in a logical discourse, it's important that every side agree on definitions. So when you say like reality, to me, it doesn't matter one bit if there is alternate realities, because we can't interact in those anyway. We're constrained to the reality that we live in. So we have to abide by the laws of nature, the laws of logic. All those things that we're constrained to inside our own reality are the only things that matter. Everything else is just hyperbole or stuff that's useless dribble, because we have no evidence to support it. And again, that's my opinion. Like, there very well could be solipsism, and I always do this. For people who don't know what solipsism is, it's basically can be broken down to how do you know the universe isn't just your brain in a vat? You're creating the whole thing and everything's imaginary. Another popular one is the Matrix. Your body's in the Matrix. How would you know? And my argument to those is it really doesn't matter, because we would have to first know what it's like outside of that Matrix before we could even begin to investigate if that claim is even true. So
the Matrix defines the box. Maybe. There's lots of different schools on that, so yes, I know where you're going, but yes, solipsism. Okay. It's okay. It's a difficult proposition, I think.
And let me be clear, I don't believe in solipsism one bit, mainly because, again, there's no evidence to support it. I believe in the here and now. What we have is what we got. We need to protect what we have, aka the Earth,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from. So is the Earth. The Earth is it's a spherical ball.
Yeah, and that can be, even the field of meteorology and the jet streams and the flow of storms and clouds. Like, we can detect clouds that leave the United States and flow across the Atlantic Ocean, and they make their way back to the Pacific coast. We can measure these clouds because of the specific types of radiation in them and the quantities of that radiation. We know it's part of the same storm system that has completely circled the globe. If it was a flat Earth, it would would.
And what we can't do is actually replicate the model, which I find actually perplexing. So I have lots of problems with the flat Earth and the ball Earth and all of them. But what I find particularly disturbing is an irreplicable model, so you can't actually do it. You can't actually use a repeatable scientific method to repeat the ball Earth. You can't do it. Like, you can't recreate one in your shop or your garage. I find that a little disturbing. Now, if you want to do a flat Earth theory, I can actually make one of those and plant little trees on it, and everything seems to work out. But what I can't do is take a basketball and dump water on it, and it sticks to the basketball, no matter how fast or slow it's spinning. So that's a sort of it's a sort of anomaly for me, I guess. And what people will say is our model supports our theory and our theory supports our model. Therefore, we don't need to prove shit to you. We don't need to do it in the laboratory. That's what I get.
Well, in recreating the globe or the ball Earth that you're talking about, one, it would be quite difficult because you would first have to establish that the model that you're creating would have to have a gravitational force in and of itself. And it's going to be interacted with the Earth's gravitational force because it's located
and gravity
on
is
Earth.
a force in itself, so it produces a force. So like you could produce a gravity engine, for example, or is it not a force? Is it just a byproduct of mass? How does that work?
It's more of a byproduct, I guess, than a force. I misspoke.
Okay.
Like we know because of math and physics, and especially astrophysics and even theoretical physics. Like, we can look through telescope, different type, of course, and see what distant stars are made out of, and we can determine how much gravity they're exerting on their solar system. So.
Okay.
Or that you're reading data.
Gravity waves. I saw it with LIGO.
Because I hear people say
LIGO
that a lot about.
I'm sorry.
I
don't mean to make light of it.
See this, but I'm under the impression from what the data that I'm reading anyway, most of the long-range distance satellites use infrared and other wavelengths that we don't see. You know, we don't see them in that way. It's more data that they use to project the image that they give you.
Well, correct. Like, I mean, that is correct. But based on the infrared readings, we can determine using computers, just like when we look at DNA, we can determine what elements those stars are burning off of. Are they hot enough to fuel off of hydrogen? Are they hot enough to fuel off of helium as well? Like our sun, for instance, is not massive enough to fuel off of the helium that it produces after the hydrogen process. So once all the hydrogen of our star is gone, that's when our sun will go out. There are supermassive suns out there, like Regulus, that are so massive and so dense that even when they run out of the hydrogen, they can continue to break down and fusion helium. And again,
yeah, and I was taught all this stuff in school too. You know, as far as how they can, you know, look at the blip of the light that goes around a star to tell me that there's a planet, and the color that it is tells you, you know, what type of atmosphere it has, and just little things like that. But do you truly believe that's real? Because I can show you images or use the same type of spectral analysis on the planet, and they can't give me the same decisive answers that you're telling me that they can do with not thousands of miles, but light years away. And that's what bothers me with that, as far as the detail that you're getting into. I understand that you can pick out planets, but it starts getting into the realms that just are mine past what I can imagine.
For me, for them to fake that much, it's not just NASA that does this. There's independent observatories around the world and other countries, rocket and space programs, that they tend to agree with the findings and whatnot, and the data, if you want to use that term, that we see that NASA uses when they make these predictions and whatnot. And I just feel it would be too difficult to contain that big of a conspiracy. And what purpose? What would be the purpose for them to make up this big complete lie about knowing what distant stars are made out of or their masses? It serves no purpose.
It doesn't really have to be a complete big lie. It has to be the first person that made the assumption that the data that they're bringing in as relates to this certain thing, and and the assumption's just been dragged along. That assumption may have been incorrect. They might not be able, like, they've just kept it going on. So now when they regurgitate the same method, it's going to result like the same. So,
but what's the
same answers?
What's the antithesis, though? Where is any dissenting data from any relevant scientist out there? And I'm not trying
to. Like you said, how can they measure that far away? How can they determine that it's really what it is? What they speculate it is?
And again, I'm not an astrophysicist. I love
just because
learning
the
about
collective
it.
have assumed that they're correct on their assumption doesn't really mean they are.
But see, that's the great thing about science. The only thing that disproves it is more science. And when scientists make these discoveries, there are legions of other scientists who don't want that theory or hypothesis to be correct, and they set out to peer review and try to refute those findings. And the only times that we accept things as fact and scientific theories is when the evidence leads not only to that conclusion from the predicted process, but the evidence also excludes all other possibilities. And when we're talking about being able to look at distant stars and galaxies and finding out what they're made of, there's no competing ideas that hold any water.
So we have to go with theirs because it's just the way it is? I don't understand.
At the moment, do we adhere to them? Do we have to adhere to the rules, or can we assume that they may be on the right path, but we can also put other theorems on too? So that's what I don't like about what they're doing, is there's no other alternatives to what they're offering at the moment.
But there's no alternatives because no one has found any. It's not because they're trying to cover it up. Like, scientist X has found the problem of it's a big lie. NASA's lying. We can't tell what other stars are doing. It's just too far away. Not only has none of them ever come forward, none of them have ever published anything either. So to me, that's why I believe it.
Talking about somebody that's got the keys to that, because if I try and do anything, like let's say I decide I'm going to build a rocket and I'm going to send something into space. I have to get authority to be able to go through the airspace to go to space to send something there. So if I'm doing things like that, it just seems to me that you're saying that you can't prove anything other than that because nobody else has a theory. Well, we aren't. I shouldn't say we, but people that are going out there trying to prove these things have to go through NASA or a corporation that handles it in a different country to go into space. And I think that's something that people don't think of.
And, I would agree with that.
It's being very regulated.
I will say this, too, as far as, Sean, what you're getting at, I do see a lot of the problems with as far as why there would have to be so many people in the know. I mean, there would have to be so many people that know that this is going on or something's going on that should be speaking up to high heaven, and they're not. But I think it comes down to compartmentalization and, really, a lot of people wouldn't even scream out if they did know certain things. I mean, when people watch, Secret Servicemen watch women get raped by the president or, whatever the case may be, they don't say nothing. And it's amazing that people would question the morality of other people, or even that they would even try and tell the rest of the world.
Well, sometimes it's easier to keep a lie than try and tell the truth anyway. Why would you try to tell the truth when all you would have to do is remain silent and not say a word? You know what I mean? Like, why would you want to open when it's easier for them to turn around to somebody that does come out and say, oh, well, I was at X, whatever it happens to be, and I'm trying to be a whistleblower. They can turn around and say, that person's crazy. We had to disband them because of blah, 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 blah. They can make whatever story they want up, and they've got the credibility behind. One person really doesn't have any credibility compared to a group.
Right, but that's why if you go back through all the major discoveries, germ theory, nuclear theory, evolutionary theory, globe theory, the heliocentric model, these ideas weren't just posited by one person. They typically had a team with them that helped write these papers. And the thing about science, if a scientist, everybody's familiar with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's an astrophysicist. He is the president of Hayden Planetarium.
An asshole? Yeah, I know he is.
If he came out with evidence and said, guys, we've been shammed, we actually can't do what a lot of people in NASA and whatever say that we can do, and here's the evidence for it. The evidence would be based on factual things that we would be able to look at. Maybe not us, because we're not in the know, we don't have the technology, we don't have money, the funds, whatever. But other scientists could corroborate his story, and that would be accepted as the new norm. And until that happens, I personally am forced to adhere to what the majority of the scientific community has determined to be what's true.
Have you looked
so
at
500 years ago, you'd be saying the same thing, right? I mean, that's what we're getting at. You'd be like, oh, it's flat.
Well,
science has proved it. This is where I go with that. So I take more of a historical bent to the whole thing, and I think that perception is I had a friend that went up, right, and he skydived. He did skydiving, and I've mentioned this to him, and he says, well, no, that's impossible because I've seen the curvature of the Earth, right? So you don't think that his perception played a role on the way he perceived things. In other words, his indoctrination didn't play any sort of role there. So if you believe he believed he could see the curvature of the Earth, right? Do you think that plays a role, or do you think the human dynamic is moot?
Well, first I'd like to address what you said about the 500 years ago. I assume that you were going with the scientific community thought, not only in the geocentric model where the sun revolved around the Earth, but Copernicus in the 16th century was the first Western historian really to publish something saying that the Earth was indeed a globe. But Greek scholars 2,500 years ago, they knew the Earth was a sphere. They just did not know the diameter of it.
They say that, but you can look at Herodotus, and I have one of his maps, and it's a flat Earth, and it sort of depends. Those are the ones we've cherry-picked and we focused on because, right, they believe the model we believe, and so we've said, well, yes, let's hold them up as a sort of light post, right? We're going to focus on them. But the Greeks have vacillated between heliocentrism and geocentrism according to the political views of the day. So again, I think that plays a sort of role on our perception of the way things work. In other words, this is what I was saying. My friend saw a global model when he went skydiving because he believed it was a global model. And he's like, no, I've seen the curve of the Earth. I don't want to talk to you about it. And there's no way that he should theoretically have been high enough to even see it. So I guess if that makes any sort of sense.
And with what you're saying, like if you look at a train track and it stays like the further it gets away, it looks like curved. So like if you're up skydiving, like I think that like you're coming down and you're looking straight ahead here in the sky, and like it's that far away that to you it looks as if it's curving.
Sure, sure it does, and I don't know. I think perception plays a large role on it. I mean, I don't want to admit what this other guy's saying here. I'm sorry, I missed your name there, Sean. Yeah, but I'm just saying that there is that sort of human component that comes into play. And, I think that if we fast forwarded 100 years from now and NASA was like, oh, no, we got it wrong, the Earth is flat, I think that 90% of the population would be like, yep, it's flat. Most people would not know how to do the experiments. I mean, they wouldn't bother to spend the time and do it. So there is that sort of psychological component to it as well.
I agree. I also think that it's, and this is my opinion, a big thing of mine is childhood education and inner city funding for schools. I think it's a travesty that we live in a world in a digital age where so many people find it so either boring or trivial to learn about the world and universe that we live in. Even if what we're learning is full of half-truths or maybe blatant lies, people need to go out and be the ones to win the Nobel Prize and correct the scientific community so the new generations can learn correctly. And
I've learned science since primary school, so I don't know that much about science. As long as I know my 2 times tables, I'm fine.
And that's the view that most people have.
So Rocketman is here. He should probably weigh in. I'm sure he will. We're waiting for you, brother.
Good old Rocketman, NASA employee.
Yeah, he works for NASA. He's not going to say anything. Okay. Well, at least I'm going to say my dues, you guy, because it's 3 o'clock in the morning for me, so I still have to work in the morning. So good night, everybody. Nice to talk to y'all. Good night, everybody in the side chat, and we'll talk again.
Have a good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
And Sean, just for so you know who I am as far as what I think. think. I don't think the Earth's flat. I just think there's something wrong with the model that I've been told, just from what the things that I've done. So that's why I stick around and try and figure out what the new idea is or what people can show me, because something's definitely not right with the 24,000 mile around globe at the equator. It just doesn't work out.
There's a flat Earth model that there's a channel called Globebusters, and they've got like a 4-hour documentary. I was looking at it before, and there's a flat Earth model that like they think is like, correct. Like it might, like everything on it works. I need to watch that today. Like.
The one with the 2 Antarcticas.
Let me try and get it up now. I'll tell you which one it is.
I saw something about it. I didn't see an actual map though.
Hold on, I'll try and get it up now. But my mate was going on about it yesterday, so I was looking at it today. And
I was talking about this earlier in another channel, but the rainbow is what gets me. That I tried to recreate a rainbow indoors, not with the sun, but with my own alternate light source, and it ended up being. I mean, I can create the spectrum. I can split the spectrum and do it all colors all over the walls, make it look cool. But in order to bend the light, you have to have a mirror, and it has to be a curved mirror to do this. And it bothers me that I can go outside, and the really weird thing is if you go outside and you stand up on like a top of a waterfall and you look down, it gives you a full circle instead of just the rainbow that we're all used to seeing, the half circle. And
couldn't you put that down to the atmosphere, the light bending off the atmosphere?
Well, then it would. I know what you're talking about, and I thought about that too. So if it would bend it, you couldn't get the full curve. As far as you couldn't get a full arch or even close to it, because the light would have to be completely convex or moved around to where so everything would do that, not just sunlight. You see what I'm saying? It wouldn't just be the spectrum of a rainbow.
Yeah.
Have you looked into the mechanics of how rainbows are formed and how we perceive them?
Yes, I did. I did look into it a little bit. I've only been doing it for about 2 days, trying to recreate rainbows and search out all the information of how to do it, how to split the spectrum with, prisms and everything like that. But once I had to do it myself to actually create it, it dawned on me, you have to have a curved mirror behind the light source.
So are you saying there's a dome?
I don't know. I just know there's got to be something reflecting the light. The light source has to be coming from a curved apparatus, like a flashlight, or I just don't know how to describe it any other way, but you have to have a curved reflector to create a curved rainbow. I can do it all day long, a straight one, with just water. All I need is water and then water or vapor to make it hang in the air. But as soon as I try to curve things, it turns weird.
A good example that I would use about light refraction and reflection, and you might know this, but a lot of people I talk to don't. So the polar ice cap, the white surface of the ice, reflects more light than it absorbs, and it reflects that light back up into the atmosphere. And when you have a rainbow, you have the visible spectrum lights bombarding us from the sun, as well as the infrared lights that we cannot see. And when those lights pass through the rain droplet, which in your creation, you could use a prism or water vapor or whatever you wanted, though that light spectrum, Roy G. Biv, is being shot down from the sun through our nitrogen-rich atmosphere, and it is being reflected back up off the surface of the planet back up into the sky. But I would start with doing extensive research on how we actually view and why we see rainbows the way we do, and then I would start trying to recreate that after you have a better understanding of why we see it the way we do.
No, I know what you're getting at. You're saying the lenses of our eyes and the actual perspective of where you're at from the light refraction actually would be. I know what you're getting at, and that is true. I have looked into that. It's just when I had to recreate it myself within my own sterile environment, not the outside, is when I got into that. But somebody did tell me that I needed a full spectrum light, and I could create rainbows all day long. So I'm going to look at that too.
How you going? I'm a Rocketman.
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, there we go.
5x5.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to talk to you guys, and I just realized my audio wasn't working for some reason.
That's all good, brother. It's working now.
So, who was it? Your rainbow inside experiments. Can you tell me exactly Can you tell me what you were doing to try to recreate that?
Yeah, no problem. First I tried just with just a regular light, LED light. It's I don't have it sitting in front of me right here, but it's a high intensity light running off of 4D cell batteries that I can focus. So I was just running that off of just into a prism at first, just to see if I could make it to where I curved it just with water itself, just with the spray of the water. So I was actually creating the rainbow cheating, completely cheating. And then I got to the point to where I knew I couldn't curve it with anything else but the light had to bend. It wasn't the water, it wasn't anything like that. So I got it to where I was sending it onto just a mirror, and I thought I could focus the light through water that was inside of a plastic curve. So it was a water bottle at first, and I could actually get the curve to go, but it wouldn't, the spectrum wouldn't split just right. And I couldn't get it to curve in the air. It would just be on a wall to where it would look like it would curve just because of the way that it fell. And once I used a satellite dish, and actually put aluminum foil on the top of it and curved it around, hit it with a 1,000-watt light, bounced the light off of that through a water, it was a flat water surface. I got the spectrum across it, sprayed mist in the air, and I'll admit it wasn't a perfect curve. It didn't look exactly like a rainbow, but it curved in midair.
Okay, so you were trying to use, instead of having a mist of water in the air, you were trying to use a bag of water or something like that, right?
That was just to split the spectrum with what I had in the atmosphere, because you don't have a prism sitting in the air. I know it's water, that vapor that you're hitting, but yes, I was doing both. I was using mist at the end to create the rainbow where I was visually seeing it, but water as it passed after the mirror to give me my spectrum split.
Yeah, because if you look at the way a rainbow is made, and if I get some of the details wrong, I apologize, but if I remember correctly, the sun's got to be behind you. You've got to have a lot of water vapor in the air, and if you go outside and use a garden hose and you spray a garden hose, if you stand with your back to the sun and spray a garden hose so that you got like a fine mist in the air, you'll get a rainbow in that.
Of course, yeah, right? With the sun.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's the mist in the air that is the thing. You got to have a light source behind you and a mist in the air.
Okay, okay, so you're saying that if I went into a stadium and did the same thing, but the stadium lights have a prism a mirror behind them that reflects that light in a complete convex, so it's a bowl behind it. If I take a light and try and do the same thing indoors with just a mercury vapor or a hydrogen sodium bulb with no reflector behind it, it will not do the same thing, is what I'm getting at.
No, I'm not sure I understood what you were saying, but if you try to recreate it, right, we've got one natural light source, and that's the sun. And for you to see a rainbow, it's got to be behind you, and it's shining on water vapor in front of you, and the water vapor, as it goes through the water droplets in the air, it is split into its colors. Basically, the front edge of the water droplets act as a prism, and then the back edge of the water droplets act as a mirror and reflect it back. So if you want to recreate it, you've got to kind of recreate it in its truest form. If you were to get
so where's the curve come in? I mean,
the water droplets. Why does a rainbow curve? Is that what you're asking?
Well, you're saying that the water droplets split the spectrum on the first edge as the light passes through the water vapor, the droplet, and as it hits the back, that's the mirror that sends it back to you. You're telling me that's what gives it to you. That's what gives you the spectrum split in the mirror coming back to give it to your eyeballs. Instead of just keeping on going, the light doesn't keep going. It comes at you, but the curve's not there.
What curve? The arch of the rainbow.
Yes.
No, yes, it will be. It will be there.
Oh, I know it's there. I'm saying if I recreate it myself, in order to get that rainbow to do that, I can make the spectrum. I can split water. I mean, split the 7 layers, RGB, then the purple, green, and orange in between, so the primary colors make the secondary colors. I can do that all day long. I mean, that's very simple. But it's the curving of it within a spatial distance. It's not that it's hitting something and making a curve. It's in the air, curving whatever the arc is of your distance from that magnification. Maybe, I don't know. I'm definitely going to have to look into it more because I haven't been able to do it without it, other than being a curved mirror behind the light source.
Well, if you ever look at a rainbow, you only see the top half of it, right? Because the center of it is actually at it's kind of centered on you. So the center of it's kind of at the horizon.
If I can jump in there, couldn't I say that the water drops that it's reflecting off would be round?
Yeah, they are.
So the mirror that it is getting reflected off is rounded?
Yeah, but what he's talking about is the actual why the rainbow arches in the sky. But if you ever have a chance to be up in the air, like in an airplane or something like that, where you actually see a rainbow, it won't be an arch, it'll actually be a circle.
Exactly. So that means that the mirror that's behind it. So like if you're looking down, this perspective will give you a full concave, so it's an exact circle, a halo. It's the same thing you see if you look up in the sky on a really cold night, and the ice crystals are reflecting that circle. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong. I'm definitely going to research a little bit more of it. It's just that should be a telltale sign to me.
Yeah. See, that's why I don't. Not being able to recreate a rainbow is that just. I mean, if I'm honest, you're probably just not doing something quite right. Okay.
And I'll agree with that. That's possible. Oh,
right.
Sure.
So if you recreate it, basically you've got a very intense light source behind you, one light source, not multiple light sources. Like you can't, one light source. You got a nice water vapor in front of you. You can do it in any number of ways. And if you play around with that and experiment with that, you'll probably be able to recreate it. That to me though is not a good thing to hang my hat on to say that the Earth is not what we think it is. I mean that's a bit of a leap.
Oh no, that's just the one that's gotten here lately.
I would also point out too, which I just learned this year, and I personally was kind of fascinated about it, but it doesn't matter where you are in relation to the rainbow, everybody sees it the same way, right towards on the horizon. You'll never see a rainbow at an angle. It's always going to be straightforward on. And it doesn't matter if you're standing right next to me, if you're standing a mile away. If you can see the rainbow, it's always going to be straightforward on. You'll never see it coming at you or anything like that, which I was fascinated about that.
Yeah, basically it's always going to be directly in front of you if the sun's behind you, because it's not like it's in the air and you can move around it. It is light reflecting through, or refracting and reflecting through water vapor, and if you move around, you're going to see it from the same. It's going to look the same no matter how you move. It's just
I know that for a fact.
Yeah, so yeah, you can't ever see it from the side. It's gonna, that's the way it's gonna be. Matter of fact, if you move, if you turn and look towards the light, you won't see a rainbow. The sun's got to be behind you. Allie B, tell everybody why it's impossible to get a full shot of the moon and the Earth and the sun. Was that something you guys talked about earlier?
If I can see the sun and the moon in the same sky, how can somebody on the opposite side of the world see any sun or moon?
Say that again, Adam. What now?
Well, there's sometimes that I can see the sun and the moon in the sky at the same times. How can somebody on the opposite side of the world have the sun and the moon in their sky if it's in my sky on a round ball?
Well, on the opposite side of the world, they won't.
Yeah, there's no way that they could, and I'm not aware of any instance of where that's actually happened. I might be wrong, but I've never heard of that.
Yeah, well, there's times that I can see the sun and the moon in the sky at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. I mean and you should. That's perfectly fine. But
that's what I mean. Well, when that happens, what happens to the other side of the Earth?
They have what?
They just don't have a moon.
Yeah, they don't have a moon, or it's
it's a moonless night for them.
Now, if you're talking about the eclipses, not the eclipses, but the full moons that happen, that the sun comes up and you can still see the full moon. Now that one's a trick, because that you can't explain that.
No, you can't. You can't. And it's I can't remember what it's called. It's got a special name. Allie B says from space, not from Earth, and I'll answer that. Allie, hang on just a second. But the one you're talking about is a very special case where the sun is is setting and the moon is rising, and they're perfectly opposite from each other. And if you happen to be in the Terminator line, basically, so that you're in the twilight and you see the sun setting to your right or left or whatever, and the moon rising to the opposite direction. Because you're looking through a lot of atmosphere, you get some refraction, and so it will actually bend the light from the sun and the moon a little bit, so that you can see them together for a brief period of time. It's not a very common thing, but it does happen, and it's got a special name, and I cannot remember what it is. I personally have never seen it, but it's one of those things where you have to be in the right spot on the planet. The sun has to be setting, and the moon has to be rising. They have to be rising, and they have to be right coming up on the horizon at about the same time, or right at the horizon, and you get the atmospheric refraction that make them both. You're basically able to see both of them at the same time for a brief period of time.
Yeah, it's very short. It's like 5 minutes or 6 minutes.
It's a very special kind of thing.
I've seen it. It's quite neat, but that's almost impossible. But yeah, I guess it is explainable.
It's rare. I'm not like I said, I've never seen it. Or at least if I have, I didn't notice it. But it's and you got to be in a place where where
you can see horizon to horizon.
You can see both horizons. You don't have a lot of trees or mountains or things like that. So I mean, there's a lot of things that have to kind of work out for it to be where you can see it.
And also, it's common knowledge, but it's something that gets bypassed a lot. The Earth is extremely tiny when compared to the sun, and the amount of light that it emits towards our planet that gets bent around our planet and what have you also plays a lot into illuminating the moon on the far side. So
that's something I didn't think about. That's true, because even when you have a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse, it's 1/4 the size of the Earth. So I see your point there. That is true.
So Allie was asking about a picture of all three, the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun, all at the same time from space. And I'm assuming, Allie, you're talking about getting a full picture of the full Earth, the full Moon, and the Sun. And the reason you're really not going to be able to get that is because in order to get that, you would have to have something able to take a camera or able to take a picture out past the moon's orbit. And if you did,
well, wait a minute, we've got a satellite sitting out there. I'm not sure if it's called Kepler or whatever. It's 1 million miles sitting out there taking pictures, from what I heard.
It's the Epic camera. It's actually inside. It's between the sun and the Earth.
Right, but that means it's past the.
I mean, but to get all three of them in the picture, you'd have to be out past the Earth and the moon's orbit. So you'd have to be between like Earth and Mars, and then even then, if you were able to get all three of them in the picture, the brightness of the sun would basically you wouldn't be able to see anything from
it would drown out the Earth.
Yeah, if you were to get them all three in the picture now, and there's probably some scenario where you could get a sun, Earth, moon from an angle, but then again, you'd have to be very far away and have a camera that could get the whole thing. But there again, the sun's going to be so bright compared to everything else that it's just it's going to just kill it.
One thing I would add to that too about the sun's brightness is we see our sun as yellow because of our atmosphere, and out in space, the light it emits is white, pure light, which is extremely bright. So I think that would play into it as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you guys see the? Never mind. Well, there was a video that I think Jaron had put up recently about the sun in Antarctica at this time of the year, and he was saying, "Why is it so bright down there? It's the middle of summer. There should be no sun in Antarctica." Well, it was bright because it was the moon, right? And it was was basically you had the cameras were exposed so that, because it was normally dark, and all of a sudden the moon's out and they had a full moon and you could see the stars in the sky. And when the moon comes around in this video, what he shows, you don't actually see the moon, but there's other videos out there that show this. When the moon comes around, the moon looks like the blamed sun, but you can still see the stars in the sky. But I mean, it's just so bright. It's incredible. And it's just, it's amazing. People don't realize that how much something like the sun or the moon can just completely wash out other things in the sky. If you ever try to take when you go out and try to look at stars when there's a full moon out, it's hard to see stars in the sky around the moon because it's just so bright.
Yeah, and using a telescope to get fine details of the lunar surface itself when it's a full moon. I mean, I personally can only stand to look through my telescope for a few seconds at a time before I have to give my eye a break because it's just so bright.
Well, then you need to build up tolerance. My God, no. Just give you a hard time.
Who was it that was earlier that was talking about a model, and they can build a flat Earth model, but they can't go out in their garage and build
I think that was the guy that left. Me and him chatted about that shortly.
Yeah, I was trying to get in there, and then that's when I realized my microphone wasn't working and nobody could hear me. But the thing about a model that I'm not sure a lot of people realize, and maybe it gets a little confused, but I saw what Globebusters and them came out with, where they had their quote unquote new model where it had the multiple magnetic poles and Hawaii was in the center of whatever and blah blah blah. And I don't think they realize what a model actually is. And when you talk about a model of the Earth and the solar system, it's not a physical representation. It's a mathematical representation. It basically it is, you have got a mathematical model based in the laws of physics as we know them that describe the way we see things behave in the world around us. And you test it by predicting something, like saying, I'm going to go out and I'm going to predict where these stars are going to be, and it's going to rise over the horizon at this point or this point, and it should come up, this star should come up at this azimuth, and so on and so forth. And you go out and you predict that on a certain date, and then you go out and you measure that. And if it measures and predicts, and you keep doing that, and that's how you kind of that's what a model is. It's not something physical. It is a mathematical construct based on physics that as we understand it. And you can predict a future state, or you can predict a past state, and you can go and you can verify that past state or that future state by making actual measurements against it. And so I'm not sure, I think a lot of people get hung up on the term model and they think it's something physical, and it's not physical.
Well, that's what he's saying, is that you can't go out and physically make a model that works like a globe.
No, you can't physically. You can't. Yeah, I mean it's
which is kind of strange. This same thing with geomagnetics. You think you could explain it away by, hey, I should be able to take a solid mass ball with a solid iron core, liquid multiply some molten, I guess it would be iron or no copper around it, and spin that sucker. Do you know even just to generate a small amount of electricity, enough to make a magnetic field that you can, measure? The speeds are so high, and they're just amazingly high for even a small little thing. And just look at the Earth and how it's been.
Right, but the smaller an object is, especially if you're trying to get electromagnetic waves or gravitational pull out of it, the smaller it is, the more dense it's going to have to be to scale, and you're also going to have to spin the sucker at enormous speeds.
So the bigger it is, the slower you'd have to spin it?
No, but if you're trying to recreate something to a scale, like a scale that, like if you're trying to recreate the Earth to a scale that me and you can hold in our hands or we can build in our garage, then when you do this, one, the Earth's core is the way it is because of a couple of factors. One, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of radiation from uranium and other things that help keep this hot. These are things you can't recreate on a small scale. You can't recreate a pressure like that, on your garage in a small scale. sun. You can't create the radioactive heating in the Earth's core on a small scale. So you have to, and then but let's say you could, for just
No,
sake
but I
of
can
argument.
cheat. I can get rid of the whole idea that I need the mechanism to make the mechanics for the electromagnetics, and already have the coil and the magnets there and spin them to where they
Okay.
generate a field that comes out. I can bypass the whole molten iron area, and when they do that, it takes such speed that it doesn't matter what the mechanism is to make the electromagnetics. You would have to spin it to generate 3,000 or 1,000 mile magnetosphere around it to shield us from the radiation. I see what. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll shut up. I'll let you go.
Well, no, I see what you're saying, and I understand that, but you got to remember, or you got to consider this. It's like to scale something like the size of the Earth down to a model that you could work with in your hands or something like that. Then you get down to where the electromagnetic force that you're trying to measure is going to be very, very tiny, and it's going to be something that is not measurable by you, because you're not in an isolated system. You're already on the Earth with an electromagnetic force around you at all times, and so you somehow would have to isolate it. So the only way to isolate something like that is you amplify it. So you would have to spin it faster, or you'd have to do something else to get it to where you've got enough delineation between what you're actually trying to measure and the ambient background noise. And so when you're dealing with something like that, you got to kind of think about, well, if I'm trying to measure the magnetic field of something, I've already got a magnetic field around me. I have to account for that. And if you're trying just to scale down the Earth to something, it would be virtually impossible to build something in your garage that would be a scale model where you could actually measure the magnetic field, because it would be so tiny. If you think about it, Earth's magnetic field is really not that strong. If you think about it, you can overpower it with a simple little refrigerator magnet at close proximity is stronger than Earth's magnetic field. Now it's there, and there's no doubt it's there. So I'm not trying to say it's insignificant, but I can take a refrigerator magnet and hold it next to a compass. I can take a refrigerator magnet, hold it next to a compass, and the refrigerator magnet at close proximity is stronger than Earth's magnetic field, right? So Earth's magnetic field is very small. Now the Earth is very large, therefore the Earth, the magnetic field is large as a result. But in comparison, it's just a neodymium magnet is many more times stronger than the Earth's magnetic field. If you were to scale it up, it would be huge. So
also that magnetic field reaches far out into space as well. And I'm not sure, you would know better than me because I'm kind of just a dabbler in this, but isn't our electromagnetic field at its furthest reaches stronger than it is here on the surface?
I don't know. Maybe. I just don't know.
The reason I posit that is because of the solar radiation that bombards our planet. It gets felt so far out from our planet, and that's what helps protect us from it.
But it depends on if you go with the way that we've been taught. It's when plasma or ions hit that spherical magnetic sphere that comes into the polar regions when you get to the aurora borealis. So it just depends on certain times and what's happening as far as if it's charged more or less.
Yeah, and our magnetic field is actually not very uniform. If you look at the strength, you've got a pole at somewhere close to the North Pole. You've got a pole that's around Antarctica, but it's not at the South Pole. It's actually more towards the edge of Antarctica. And you've got very high magnetic field areas and low magnetic field areas that kind of in different places on the Earth. So it's not terribly uniform, and the magnetic poles have shifted many times in the Earth's past. There's evidence, some volcanic flows have basically molten iron in them, and when they solidified in a patterns aligned to the magnetic fields, and they've gone back and they've looked at the geologic record, and they can see that at certain times in the Earth's history, in its geological history, the North Magnetic Pole was actually in the south.
I've heard this a couple times, and I will say that I've even been in different places in the United States alone to where there's difference in your compass. So that means the magnetic change in those areas. And there's places where there's rock that's different. So I don't think you have to have a total pole shift for there to be anomalies or even changes in the magnetosphere for that to be different. Like what you're talking about, the bars or the I don't know exactly what it is that aligns, but I know what you're saying. They change as far as the metal will solidify different.
Yeah, basically it's volcanic. It was in volcanic flows where you had iron and things like that were magnetic metals, ferrous metals, and when they solidified, when they were liquid, they would align themselves along Earth's magnetic field. And when they solidified in that area. And so that as you go back through the geological record and they do core samples and all these places, they see that those have flip-flopped in the past a few times, and they've actually done a software model where they've kind of modeled in the Earth's magnetic core, or the Earth's core in the magnetic fields, and they've run it out for a number of years, and sure enough, if they just run it out, it shows it flipping out there somewhere in the far future. I don't remember what it is exactly, but I mean it's pretty well substantiated that the magnetic field, the poles have flipped magnetically. The magnetic poles have flipped in the past and probably will flip again in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've heard that before. I'm not sure what to believe on that, to be honest with you. I mean, I can go by what scientists say, but I can also look at the measurements that they're trying to tell me, the instruments they tell me they use this from, and I look at the models that they show me now, and if I look at the poles or the flux lines that come from north to south poles, even in this day and age, there are so many anomalies across the surface of the Earth that I don't know how they could possibly think they could have a model from, even 1,000 years ago, let alone 1,000,000 years ago, what the magnetics actually were at any given position on the planet.
And if I'm not mistaken, here recently we've actually witnessed the sun's poles flip. They do that every solar maximum, if I'm not mistaken, don't they?
Oh, I have I hadn't heard that.
Let me look real quick before I put my foot in my mouth.
That sounds right, but I wouldn't put the sun up against the Earth as far as a good model to go.
Magnetically, the sun is much more active than we are.
Right. What I was getting at is, the sun's magnetic fields flip approximately every 11 years, defining the solar cycle. The switch happens around the peak of solar activity, or this time that we call the solar maximum.
Oh, yeah, there you go. I did not realize that's what the cycles were based on.
Yeah, scientists believe the North Pole finished the change in June of 2012, and the South Pole change happened somewhere in July of 2013. What causes the flip? The sun's magnetic field is generated by a complex process inside the sun called the solar dynamo. The magnetic field starts off as basically up and down, i.e. roughly straight lines between the North and South poles. I don't want to go into the whole article, but basically what I was bringing up with that is we can observe other heavenly bodies experiencing these pole shifts, and we have evidence through the geological record that it does happen on our planet, and that to me is evidence enough that it does happen, until other evidence is given that shows that it doesn't happen.
No, I don't disagree that the poles can shift at all. I'm just saying that I don't know how somebody can say, in my mind, as far as if I look back at the record, to say, okay, because this metal showed a difference in magnetics or a different degree in magnetics of north or south or negative or positive, when they look at the geological record, you can look at the Earth now and even different spots across the globe, it should have this, but it doesn't because there's an anomaly, I guess is what it would be in that area. So it's just hard for me to think they have a model that perfectly tells them what it was back, whatever.
Well, yeah, there are anomalies, and there are differences in the the magnitude of the magnetic fields in certain areas. But on a whole, there is a north magnetic pole and a south magnetic pole, and they're not perfectly aligned. I mean, if you look at where they are now, they don't like go right dead through the center of the Earth. They're kind of off a little bit, and they move. And we've been measuring them for a number of years, decades actually, and you can go back and look at the trace of where they've moved, and it actually moves pretty rapidly, to be honest.
The pole on the Earth, yeah, it's moving quite quick, hundreds of miles in years.
Yeah, the North Pole is steadily moving towards Russia, I believe.
Yeah, I remember when I was in the Army, many years ago, the magnetic declination that was on all the maps, that we used to navigate. We didn't have GPS back then. Had a certain amount, and then I was in Alaska at the time, and it was actually a pretty good bit from Alaska between magnetic north and true north. And then I've looked back, here over the years. I've kind of looked at maps for hiking and stuff like that, and you see the difference that is changed over the years, and it always gets me. You really have to kind of keep up with it on an annual basis if you really want to use a compass and do like true navigation, the old-fashioned style of orienteering where you use a map and a compass, and then you kind of have to know the declination on an annual basis, because it can change a pretty good bit over the year.
Yeah, I just go by the sun, so it doesn't bother me too much. I don't use a compass. That's one good thing. You can always find the stars that you need to go at night and the sun during the day. So, I mean, the compass is fine, but I've always wondered that. I would always like to be completely lost. Somebody blindfold me, take me out 100 miles from any road and drop me off and try and figure out where I'm at, because that would be fun.
I've been in that situation. It's it's fun when you're expecting it. It's not so fun when you're not expecting it.
Well, yeah.
That was the thing when I was in the Army. We didn't have the GPS was not. I guess it was established, but it wasn't something that everybody used like they do now. We were not using GPS systems for this, that, and the other. It was we still did everything the old-fashioned way. It was map, compass. Yeah, so it was basically, I was in the Army before the Army became very modernized. We were still virtually Vietnam-era technology.
Yeah, I think a lot of the world has gotten to the point where they don't know the old ways of how to do anything. It's stupid to me.
Allie B, what about this? Instead of the pole that is shifting, it is the landmass instead. Is that a question, Allie B?
Sounds like a theory, not so much a question.
Yeah, I mean, we know the land masses are shifting, but that's a very slow process. Plate tectonics, they can actually measure the movement of the continental masses and things like that over time, but it's a really slow process where the magnetic pole is moving actually pretty fast.
Not just that, but where the North Pole, we tend to think of it as in the Arctic Circle, there isn't actually a landmass up there.
Yeah, it's just water.
Yeah, exactly.
And ice when it's frozen over. All right, guys, I think I'm going to drop off.
Yeah, have a good night.
Yeah, you too. All right, good night, guys.
You heading off too, then?
I was going to stick around for about 10, 15 more minutes, but yeah, I'm almost done.
Alrighty, well, I'll hang out until then, I guess.
Slatters, yeah. Okay. No, I really don't think it's flat. I just don't see the curve. I've 8 inches per mile squared. I've seen places where I've been on flat desert floors and seen over 15 miles and seen the cars with my own eyes, well, with binoculars, but seen them down there. No curve. There's just so many different things as far as satellites, Doppler, NASA, just so many different things that just don't add up. So I gotta go, well, it might not be flat, but it definitely ain't a sphere.
Bill Nye actually put out and I don't want to make an appeal to an authority because logical fallacies, I hate them, but I'm going to have to use one here. Bill Nye put out a good video back when B.O.B. came out with that Flat Earth song, and we're not technically a sphere as much as we are kind of like, and he did not mean literally a pear shape, but we have our bulges at different parts of the planet. But there was a video that I watched today that was talking about flat Earth, and it was looking across Lake Michigan at Chicago, and they said in the video that if the Earth was a sphere, we should not be able to see anything over this line, and they drew the line. But when you actually zoomed in on the camera, you could not see the streets or the doors to the skyscrapers. You could see starting out about 12 stories up on those buildings. And if the Earth was indeed flat, you would be able to see the streets, the cars, the doors, all of it. And they kind of disproved their own point unknowingly by showing that video and then zooming in on the picture. Because if it was flat, you'd be able to see completely that it was flat because you're looking over a body of water. There's no land masses or anything like that.
Well, I mean, I know what you're getting at, and I have seen the same video. I've seen a couple of them, actually, of the Chicago skyline from that vantage point. Some of them a little bit further, some of them a little bit shorter. But the distances that you should not see, it's not so much that you're not seeing 10 feet or you said 12 stories. I didn't see that. I saw maybe 2 stories or 3 stories that I couldn't see of the bottom of the buildings. Maybe it's a little bit more, but not 12. Let's say even 7 stories. The curve should be 1,700 feet at 47 miles or something like that, 43 miles. So it should be almost to the very tip of that tower. And that's where the problem comes in. It's not so much to me that, oh yeah, definitely, it's exactly, look, that I can't see the door at that building, so of course there's curve. No, it's that there's not enough. Wait, not even close to enough.
But again, if the Earth was indeed flat, and I hate to bring Sarah Palin into this, if the Earth was flat, you literally could see Russia from Alaska. Because the only restrictions that the human eyes have, like when you watch the weather and it says visibility 10 miles on a clear day, that visibility is restricted because of the horizon and the curvature of the Earth. If you were on a flat surface and you had sufficient light, you would be able to see things 40, 50, 60 miles away with the unaided eye. But because we don't live on a flat surface, that's why we're restricted to that typically 10-mile unaided vision. When you're looking at, like, if Panama City Beach is the closest beach to me, when I'm looking down through the Gulf of Mexico, if the Earth was flat, regardless of distance, I would be able to see a landmass, and you can't. You can see right about 10 miles out, which is where the curvature starts to affect our vision. Obviously,
you really
with the
think you can almost 10 miles?
Well, I mean,
I go out to the desert a lot, and I'm not going to get into what I do as far as that. You know what, I will. I shoot long range distances out there, and
right.
it's over half a mile. So I'm going to places I can shoot a long ways and see a long ways, so I'm not hitting anybody or anything. And the place that I go, that's 14-mile flatness. It's a dry desert lake, and I can sit in places where I can see further than that, even sitting on the plane of that lake. I mean, I just don't see how if I can only see 10 miles, I could see a car on a road that extends even 30 miles or 20 miles at least away from this desert floor.
So not to change topics, but as a long distance shooter, are you in the northern hemisphere, I assume?
Yep.
I forget the term.
No, I don't worry about the Coriolis effect, and that's one of the weirdest things to me too, because when I was taught about the Coriolis effect when I shot, I was just told about the effect of the bullet. It's that when you're shooting, you have to worry about the spin of the earth, north and south. Nobody ever showed you about east and west as far as it coming up, down, all that kind of stuff as far as the direction. So when I shoot, I have to admit, I don't worry about Coriolis effect at even a half a mile. I am worried about the spin of that bullet, though, what I'm packing behind it. I know I've went into the whole Coriolis effect with a bunch of people as far as one guy was a gunnery sergeant, and he was saying he didn't He wasn't sure exactly how the mathematics worked all out and everything, and he found an actual handbook from, I guess, his training or whatever that showed how to do it. And it did definitely show you a difference in the trajectories, but it was north and south. I never got the actual PDF, didn't download it, so it might have had more in it, but I didn't see an east and west calculation.
Yeah, I've got guns, but I don't. I've never done any kind of long distance shooting, so that's why I was going to ask you about that. But it was a pleasure talking to you guys. It was fun. Hopefully, we all can have another hangout sometime.
Definitely. Yeah, nobody was yelling at each other. It worked out good. You have a good night, man.
You too. Bye-bye.
Nobody to converse with. Hello. Adam, are you still there?
Am I the only one on the chat? Woohoo! Howdy doody in YouTube land. How's everybody going? How's everybody today? I've got some good topics to go research later on. We've got Meroditis. I don't know how to spell that. I'm going to have to find whatever character they were talking about. I'm going to be looking into the mechanics of rainbows. A little bit more heliocentric research and geocentric research to be coming from myself. It's good to listen to some people like Iron, whatever he wants to pretend his name is, even if it is that. Sorry, mate, but you seem pretty smart. Good to listen to. A little bit better than zysis. Zysis, you're good. I like listening to you sometimes, but when you take your hat off, the one that makes you feel like you're on a pedestal. As soon as you take yourself off the pedestal, you sound really smart, but as soon as you put yourself on the pedestal, it's like I can't even pay attention to what you're saying. That's the truth in the matter. I'm just trying to give it to you, so if you're trying to actually appeal to people, I'm trying to help you out, mate. Trying to help your ass to get some more viewers, to appeal to more people. Yeah. Trying to help you appeal to more people. Oh, home delivery. Sweet. Howdy doody, people. I'm back again. How is everybody on this fine day? Good day it is. Good day. Good day indeed. So, what's everybody doing today? Anybody over on that other show? The one where a whole bunch of fuckwits hang out? I shouldn't really say that. It's not very nice, but seems to be the trend these days. All dickheads seem to flock to that fucking hangout, and then they seem to stay there and think that their shit don't stink and that they've done nothing wrong against anybody. They hold themselves on a pedestal. I can give it to zysis and characters like Atheist Rex. They have come out and debunked these other people, went on other shows and copped the same type of criticism from other people and been able to roll with it. These other people, well, whatever you want to call them, the free chan Yvette little sheeple dogs, them motherfuckers, they're all stupid. They just follow like sheep. Oh, Yvette, well, maybe you're going to send me a fucking nude pic one day. She's some 40-year-old fucking with big saggies. I hope she does send you a fucking nude and you realise that whole time you've been waiting for a nude from a hippo. Hippo nude for the win. Is there a connection with the Munich shooting, the nice truck, and good jar and Clint? I don't know what you're going on about, PK Truth, but there's a video in my subscription list, and PK seems to be going off at somebody. Good old PK22. Anybody going to come on and have a discussion? Oh, we've got Red's Little Dick. Red Little Dick has a chat coming up. 13 hours. Who's in his chat? Let's see the troll account. He's got one troll account, wrestling troll account. He's got one of his other troll accounts. Yep, it's one of his other accounts, trolling accounts with Danish accent. Then he's got good old his Red's Rhetoric account. Then he's got another puppet that's joining in. Some people will never learn. Come on, people. There must be somebody that wants to talk. 15 people watching. Nobody's talking. You want to come on and bring up a new topic? Might need some zysis in here. Good old zysis might need to come on and entertain the people. Come on. Teach us, zysis. Teach us. Teach us. We need the teacher. We need the Zeiss. He's like Zeus, the Zeiss, because he's so precise. What he says, just dis. Oh, well, it's getting a bit boring. 6:30. I'm going to go get a feed and have a shower and shave the triple S's. I'm going to join the Nazis for half an hour, the triple S it. And I wish everybody a good night. I might tune in again later, I guess. Peace out.
Do you have any more questions you need to ask us?
Yeah.
Like what?
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
I said that is personal information.
Hey guys, what do you think about the flat Earth?
What? I think it's very decent. The what?
Do you think the Earth is flat?
I'm sorry, what did you repeat that one more time?
Do you think the Earth is flat?
No, the Earth is not flat.
Why not?
The astronauts, they have proven that it's round.
It's all bullshit, man. Don't believe them. It's all lies.
It's all fake.
It's all fake CGI. The Earth is flat, okay?
No, it's not.
Tell your friends. Tell all your friends. It's cool.
Listen. The Earth is round, so...
It's not round, man. You've been lied to.
There is no moon.
Your teachers are lying to you.
The Earth is not flat.
Okay, so how does the oceans work on a ball? How does it cling to the ball?
Nothing is true. Everything is true. There's this thing called gravity, and it keeps the water on the ground.
Okay, you can prove it? You can prove gravity?
Yeah, if you jump, what do? You land on the ground. Gravity. And it keeps the water.
Because you're heavy, you come down. It's weight, man.
Yeah, gravity pulls you down. Gravity is mass.
No, it's not.
Oh my gosh, you're so stupid.
Also, have you ever seen a curvature?
A what?
Curvature of the Earth. Have you seen it?
Yeah. I've been on outer space a couple of times in my day.
Really? You've been on the ISS?
Yeah, we're living on the space station right now.
No, seriously, tell your friends, yeah? The Earth is flat.
It's not flat. Listen. All my friends are dead.
Okay, tell them all to come to this channel, yeah?
The Earth's round, so they don't even need to come. Are all dead.
This hangout is about flat Earth, okay?
What?
This hangout is about flat Earth.
Well, yeah, but I'm trying to prove it wrong. It's not flat.
You haven't proved it.
What?
You haven't proved anything.
You know, I bet you're a 50-year-old man that has nothing better to do in his life except trying to prove facts wrong.
All he said was gravity. Gravity is not proven.
Well, you said that if it's round, then how does the water stay on the Earth? And I said gravity.
Yeah, I'm telling you, gravity hasn't been proven, so that goes out the window.
Gravity has been proven, and it will stay proven. Well, okay. If you drop an apple from a tree, what happens?
Drops to the ground.
Yeah, because of gravity.
No, because it's heavier than air, isn't it?
Are you telling my son wrong information? Because I promise you, I will find you, I will come to you, I will prove you wrong, mister.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any other things you want to say to my son?
Yes, gravity doesn't exist.
Where do you get off telling children what doesn't exist? Especially that scientists have already proven right.
Yeah, but they lied.
Where do you get off telling me who lies and who doesn't?
I'm sorry, but your kids have been brainwashed.
Sir, I'm going to have to come over there and I'm going to brainwash your brains out.
Okay. So listen, kids, just spread the word, yeah? The Earth is flat.
You spend one more word, and sir, I will personally come to you and make sure I snap the brainwashing right out of you. I will slap sense into you. So funny until I come over there and I'll beat your butt.
The Earth is flat. The Earth is flat.
Earth is flat. Earth is flat. How about you just keep going on with your little nursery rhymes? Well, I'll come over there and I'll serve you some butt whoop.
Hey, where's Bruce?
Bruce is busy elsewhere, probably saving some people from dying. I don't know, and I don't care. I want to make sure you stop harassing these young little children.
Well, Superman whooped his ass, right?
First, Bruce is the most strongest man I've ever met in my life. And I know that if you're going to keep sitting here and trying to prove all those theories wrong, he's going to come over there and serve you some A-whooping. Now, son, let me tell you right now, I have gone to many schools in my year. I've gone to college many times. I know where I get off, and I want to know where you get off. Telling me where people lie and don't, where physics exists and if they don't, and if science are wrong or not. Please tell me where you get off.
Listen, Bruce Wayne got his ass whooped by Superman.
Really? 'Cause I'm pretty sure he did make Superman bleed. So apparently Superman's not a god. He's a little human being that gets his A-whooped every time he dares to step out of line.
So did you see the movie?
I saw the movie. I've read comics. I've seen Injustice. I played Injustice. B, you tell me one thing that proves that Superman has beaten Batman. Because I'm telling you right now, in almost every comic book, Batman always wins. Bruce always is prepared and he always whips his A.
That's a lie as well, because Superman is way stronger.
Please tell me how it's a lie, dear. Please go ahead, right now.
Superman is a man of steel, okay?
Yes, and he was broken, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. Stabbed right through the chest, honey. Go say hi to his grave for me. Bye-bye.
Listen, nobody can beat Superman.
Felix, I'm pretty sure Doomsday has, Batman did, Wonder Woman can't, Shazam has, Darkseid has. I'm sure someone like you should know. He's died many times.
So, what do you think of Arnie?
Arnie? Who the is Arnie?
The guy you spoke to earlier, Arnie, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
He's a little punk A, snotting, lying, drunk A piece of crap. And when I find him, he's gonna be sorry he ever even spoke on this hangout.
No. Negative.
Yes.
No.
No. Where do you get off telling me no? Do you know who I am?
Listen, you got any homework to do?
Like I said, I've been through college many times. I don't do homework anymore. Thank you, though.
How old are you?
I am 30 years old, and I've had many experiences in my life. Now, please tell me where you get off trying to tell me how to live my life already. Please go ahead.
Listen, man, spread the word. The Earth is flat, okay?
What are you, part of the Illuminati? Don't try to put your brainwashing in my head. I already know how this Earth works. Maybe you should go finish college up and learn a little something.
Okay, so how do airplanes fly on a ball Earth?
Oh yeah, before you get on these hangouts, make sure you finish being high and stop doing weed before you get on the hangouts. Okay, so yeah.
So what else?
What else? Please tell me what else.
Answer my question, man. How does airplanes fly on a ball Earth?
It's called gravity. How about you go test some experiments and find out for yourself, big guy? You're so smart. You are so smart. You should be able to figure it out, tough guy. Let's do this. Come on. How about you go search some experience? Use your own dang knowledge.
You don't know, do you? You don't know. Tell me.
How does Earth spin? Gravitational pull to its sun, you dummy. I've gone to college. I've gone through high school. I've gone through elementary school. I've been through it all. Please tell me what grade.
He sent me a text message. I was at work and said, "Hey man, I think the Earth is flat." Now, despite the fact that I had a lot of respect for him and thought the way that I just said that he's a genius and an expert on many different things, that one kind of took me by surprise.
So my husband and I have kind of researching the flat Earth. And I know a lot of you guys might be asking, well, haven't we been taught in school that the Earth is round and everything? Well, it's crazy because, yeah, we've been taught all this, but we don't really question stuff like this because we've been told all these things our whole life. So to think about that you're living in a flat Earth is kind of crazy and absurd, right? But actually, once my husband and I started researching it, it actually became clear that maybe we might not be living in a round world.
You know, when I first saw flat Earth being advertised on certain websites that I look at from time to time, that's what I thought. I thought, this is nuts. You know, we all learned that we live on a globe, that the Earth is a sphere, and I had never thought to even challenge that. We're all taught that from the very beginning of our lives. Finally, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I looked at a couple videos on the flat Earth theory, and I was impressed. They were making some good points. I mentioned it then to a couple people in my family, and I was promptly ridiculed, as you can imagine.
It took me months before I would click on anything about flat Earth because it just sounded ridiculous, so stupid. But when I finally did, it was one of Rob Skiba's videos, and he had said the same thing. Like, when he first saw flat Earth information, he was like, this is so dumb. Like, I'm not going to look at this. I know the Earth is a globe. We've grown up knowing this. People have known this for hundreds of years. Why even question it? But I don't know, one day I finally just clicked on it, listened to Rob Skiba, and he was talking about a man named Mark Sargent. He is on YouTube as well, and he put out an amazing video series called Flat Earth Clues. If you haven't looked at these yet, or if you haven't read anything about Flat Earth, but you've been seeing people like talking about it here and there, and you just thought it was so dumb, please go look at that series. It will blow your mind.
Now, when I first got into this, and it was about April of last year, I really didn't know what to think because it was pretty much mind-blowing. After all, I mean, I'm the son of a NASA engineer. I grew up on the Space Coast. I grew up in the late 60s, early 70s, and beyond, watching the space shots in Titusville and Cape Canaveral and Merritt Island. And this was very, very hard to wrap my mind around, and it took me a long time. In addition, I'm afraid to even say anything to any of my friends over there. I mean, as my Facebook friends, I have not that many, just over 900, but over 2/3 of them are from people I went to school with, and all of us were space babies. I mean, we have parents that worked in the space industry.
Last August, I ended up coming across this video, and they were talking about the flat Earth. See, I still can't help it. That's still my reaction to it. And the thing that grabbed me the most, the reason that I have continued to look into this and will continue to look into this is the math that is given to you to estimate the curvature of the Earth is 8 inches per mile squared. Now that means if something's 3 miles away, then you would square that, so 3 times 3 is 9, and then you would multiply it by 8 inches, which would be 72 inches. And then if you wanted it in feet, you would just divide that by 12. This is the math that's given to you by your science teachers, by science books, by NASA. This is the math. It doesn't work.
So by the time I got to Flat Earth, I'll just give you a small indication of the amount of conspiracy theories I'd looked into. Here's a quick list. Now there's many more, but here's a quick list. Fluoride, GMOs, vaccines, chemtrails, 9/11, Sandy Hook, Boston bombings, Paris attacks, missing flights, Illuminati, Bilderbergers, Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones, CFR, Trilateral Commission, Freemasons, Satanists, Talmudic Jews, Federal Reserve, Rothschilds, the Bloodlines, NWO, or New World Order, NASA, controlled opposition, war on drugs, war on terror, evolution, Big Bang Theory, depopulation, the origins of viruses and diseases. This is a very short summation of the amount of conspiracies I've looked into. So, when I see in my recommended on the right in my YouTube, when I see on the recommended side of after 3 months of looking into conspiracies, I see a video called Flat Earth. And I remember calling to my fiance who was in the other room doing work because she's a primary school teacher. So she was doing her primary school teacher stuff and grading papers or whatever. And I remember saying to her, and she's on the same page as me on a lot of this stuff. So I remember saying to her, there's a video on Flat Earth. What do you think? And she said, in just the most nonchalant way you would have ever thought, she just said, wouldn't surprise me. And that was it. She just called from the other room, wouldn't surprise me. And that's kind of where I was at, all right? It wasn't that I was a flat earther from the very beginning. I'm not going to say that. But I was open to it because of the sheer amount of conspiracy that's turned out to be true.